Kim Jong-un nodded once in approval of the disco jump rope gala, signaling an official transfer of power.
A recent study from the Centers for Disease Control finds that over 100 million children are being exposed to harmful levels of stupidity in their own homes. Hear the debate about secondhand ignorance on the next In the Know.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number here. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight is me, Bonnie.
Riley.
And Nikki.
And we have a lot of different stuff to talk about. If you don't know what Free Talk Live is, it's a talk radio that you can call into and bring up whatever's on your mind, change the subject, comment on what we're talking about. It doesn't matter.
And we do mean whatever. If you want to talk about aliens or Bigfoot.
Yep, as long as you keep
We actually prefer that.
Yeah, honestly.
There's a lot of nonsense in the world, and Bigfoot and aliens might be more fun to talk about.
Yeah.
We only have a couple of rules here. One is keep it FCC friendly, don't cuss, and the other one is one call a night.
The FCC feds will come after us if you cuss.
Yep. So I brought in a story tonight. I think I had said I was going to start with something else, but I just realized, I titled the show about this person, and I'm doing something a little bit different. So I'm changing a host rule. Not really, it's not a rule. But instead of talking about something that is brand new news, I just want to talk about something that I think is really interesting, that more people should know about, and that will bring up all kinds of conversations about the stuff we like to tell people about on here.
Cool.
So I brought up this story from Reason.com from the January 1980 issue.
Oh, wow. We're going way, way back.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't know that Reason was a thing in the 80s. I wonder when they were established.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I only knew that it was older than the website, because we actually did something kind of like this. Riley and I on Thanksgiving, we had a episode where we talked about the history of Thanksgiving. So it was the same exact type of thing. It was from the blah 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 issue, but I'm not sure what year that even was. I think it was in the 80s, but this is in January 1980. That's before Ian was even born.
Wow. Before the founder of the show was born. We're going way, way back.
So do you guys know anything about Wilhelm Reich?
That sounds familiar, but honestly,
that does sound
I couldn't.
Familiar to me. I don't remember much about it or him or the person.
He was a doctor.
Just really quick. Reason was founded in 1968.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I did not know that. But Reason is kind of a libertarian-esque, libertarian-leaning, if not actually openly libertarian magazine. Their little slogan or whatever after the word reason is free minds and free markets. So it sounds pretty openly libertarian to me. And we use them a lot of time for show prep on this show. But I was telling my sister about Wilhelm Reich because I watched, I started first, I've had heard of him for a long time. And I kind of felt like you guys just I know that name, but I didn't know why. And I read a book called The Secret Life of Plants last year that I talk about all the time because it's just oh my God, that was the most influential book to me, at least that I read last year, because it was just it made such a huge perfect, it made a good case that the government, they didn't just call out the government, but basically people who have reason to not want things to change, the systems and things that give them their power, people in colleges, people in the government, they oftentimes will go after somebody who is discovering something, whether it's true or not, that changes the paradigm.
And they don't like it when paradigms change, apparently.
They don't like change. They haven't, come to peace with the fact that change is a constant in life.
Well, they like control. So if something changes, it has to be, based on their narrative or in a way that gives them, the powers that be, more power, more control.
It's not always the government only, but a lot of times the government is involved. If not, if you look deep enough, it's where this leads to is like government control. And
I feel like at this point, like government, and at least especially in America, like government and like these mega corporations, like the 1%, right? Like universities, like that is all kind of like conglomerately linked together, like, or at the very least they're all in bed together.
Well, universities should be bastions of free thinking and learning how to critically think, but today it's become less and less of that and more of like let's push a narrative.
Well, they're state funded, most of them. Most of them are state funded, and even the private universities are oftentimes worse when it comes to like pushing like the communist like statist narrative.
Oh wow.
Just in my experience, like based on like the local colleges that I've known people that have gone to, like the like community colleges and state colleges that I've been to were not as like commie as the private schools, honestly.
That's surprising. I felt like I was only in college for part of a semester, and I was like, nah, and I dropped out of it. But it was a community college in San Antonio, and I felt like I think it was just more this teacher, like my English teacher. She was pretty commie and would make just statements that sounded pretty commie. But then again, the curriculum wasn't necessarily commie. So but that was part of one semester. But the reason I want to bring in this story about Wilhelm Reich is basically he is a textbook example of, you want to change the paradigm? Well, then we're going to destroy all your works and kill you, to skip to the end.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Right. But also just that there's just so much to learn about the way things are in this world from his story. So let's get into it. It says, American Inquisition, the FDA's persecution of Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich, born to an Austrian family in 1897, and one thing that was really interesting to me was the place that he was born was part of Austria-Hungary, or however you say that, at the time that he was born in 1897. But today, that land is now part of Ukraine. I was like, whoa.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty
really
far
interesting.
out. Like, far from where Austria is today. I mean, like...
Yeah, so it was big, yeah.
It was way bigger than I realized.
Yeah.
It says, Wilhelm Reich, born to an Austrian family in 1897, was trained as a doctor at the Vienna School of Medicine, the home of the early psychoanalytic school in Vienna. Though at first closely associated with Sigmund Freud, at Vienna's psychoanalytic polyclinic, Reich soon developed strong opposition to some of Freud's theories, resulting in his expulsion from the psychoanalytic community in 1934. He left Austria for Berlin, but only 2 years later fled Germany for Scandinavia. In 1939, closely followed by Hitler's armies, he moved on to the United States because he was like a Jew. And
right. It's interesting that they bring up Freud because Freud is the foundation of psychology and behavior psychology, at least from the psychology classes that I've taken over the years. Freud is brought up a lot. Yeah,
he was like the father of psychoanalytical things, which is like they sit there and actually try to get to the bottom of things. I don't know if that's a great definition.
I think, like, as far as Freud goes, I think he was, right about a lot of things, but I also disagree with him.
Yeah, I don't know much about him.
He's kind of infamous for like hypersexualizing things and like kind
really
of making it like creepy.
Yeah,
like, he likes to definitely sexualize a lot of things.
Yeah,
and Freud definitely. I mean, Reich definitely had that, but it's not the most interesting, or it's not why we're talking about him today.
Yeah,
like it kind of was related to what ended up being really important about what he discovered. But his initial interest was, does orgasm help resolve some issues within the person, like move themselves energetically. And I can't see any reason that would be untrue.
I tend to believe it does. I tend to believe that orgasm does move energy through your body.
Absolutely.
And it can be a great way to work through some emotional stuff. And if you're with a really loving partner, perhaps a good orgasm between you two or whatever, it can help you move through some experiences together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a very spiritual thing.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's like part of the reason him and Freud broke up, which is why I just have a bad taste in my mouth for Freud.
I like how you said that. Why they broke up.
Oh, yeah.
It just sounded funny.
They were like,
I know what you mean,
he was
though.
kind of a student of Freud. I don't know
why he was like kicked out of the school or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But basically, he believed that all neurosis was the cause of sexual repression. So like he
that's
believed
an interesting thought.
Like telling people how to orgasm, I guess. I'm pretty sure you can say that in there, but
I think so. It's a medical term. Yeah.
Well,
it's
yeah,
a
but like
medical term.
telling people how to. I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
we're not describing how to do it on air, so
right. Okay,
I think you're fine.
That's a great way to put it. So basically, he believed that. So he's really interested in that, and from it. It says, in America, Reich began a series of experiments that convinced him that the universe is suffused with subatomic primordial energy, the sustaining force of all living phenomena. And he called this force orgone energy. So it's kind of like the name's like playing off of orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
Neurosis and physical disease, he maintained, arise from biological blocking of its release in the living organism. Removal of these somatic blocks would not only rid the world of biopathies such as cancer, and he was supposedly curing cancer, but would remove sociological malfunctions such as authoritarianism and totalitarian governments.
Interesting. Maybe we should be having more orgasms.
He was starting to become a commie when he lived in Austria because, like, he saw some kind of a riot, and I don't remember what it was. Like, it was an infamous riot, and it really interested him, or like changed the way he saw things, so he kind of became a commie. But later on, he was really frustrated with the way that the Russians were being communists.
Yeah.
And I think he just like discovered over time that totalitarianism in general is bad.
Yep. It
Yeah,
is.
and I think that's pretty common where people kind of they know the system's not working, so they're like, oh, maybe socialism. Like
Yeah.
On paper, it actually sounds very good and nice.
Oh, of course it does.
But,
the wealth is equally distributed among everybody, except it requires on everyone contributing to the community. And if some people are like, yeah, I don't want to contribute anymore, it's going to fail.
Not even just that. I mean, whenever you have like people in power, they're obviously, I mean, there's not enough to go around because there's no incentive for work in production. And then obviously the people at the top are not going to go without.
Right.
So then they have an abundance.
And they decide where the stuff that's created goes.
Yeah. So on paper, it sounds good. Not really able to be executed as good.
In practice, right.
Yeah.
So he says, in place of fascist social structures, Reich advocated a pacifist, anarchic society that he called work democracy. His motto was, work and love are the wellsprings of life. They should also govern it.
Cool.
Reich established a research laboratory at Rangeley, Maine. I think that's how you say that. Do you know? Rangeley?
I don't know.
I think so.
And now I really want to go there. It says, so ever since I found out that he was doing stuff there, which was only like last week when I watched that documentary, or like, I don't know, a month ago. So Reich established a research laboratory at Rangeley, Maine, where a number of physicians and medical doctors in the Boston area joined in his investigations. He constructed metal-lined boxes, orgone energy accumulators, which he called collected omnipresent energy for use in therapy. So basically, it was, because it doesn't really explain it right here, it was like a box that was lined with metal and had organic material in it as well. And there were like several layers of that. And then it's a huge human-sized box. He started off with small ones, and he was seeing lights light up in it and stuff. And I really wish that we knew more about that, but we'll explain why we don't later. But whenever he started curing people's diseases with it was a human-sized box with like a seat in it. People would sit in there for a while until the orgone energy of themselves was accumulated in such a degree that it was helping them out, like helping, I don't know, just energetically change things in their body, and it was treating cancer. It says, patients were to sit in these boxes to receive the benefits of the accumulated energy. In published articles, Reich claimed successful treatment of cancer, leukemia, and other diseases. As word of the orgone boxes spread, Reich's Institute began sending accumulators to interested persons throughout the United States and the world. One of those people was, who's like the guy you know as like a genius? Einstein. And Einstein, I kind of dislike him now ever since I read about how he treated Reich. It was like, I don't think he gave him a fair shot. It was just basically trying to make it seem like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. But
so
like,
you think that Einstein was dismissive of Reich?
Right, definitely.
Okay.
And like Reich spent a whole day going to his house and showing it to him and stuff, and he was like, oh, it doesn't work because this. And then when Reich responded to him and was like, oh, I see why you would think that, but here's why you're wrong, and like explained it, Einstein just never replied to him again. And that just makes me think he's like, he's them, or they and them and those, Yeah. He's one of them. I don't know. It says, enter now the Food and Drug Administration. These accumulators, the boxes, the FDA maintained were misbranded and adulterated within the meaning of the Food and Drug Act. Misbranded because their accompanying literature made claims of curative powers that were patently false, they said. Adulterated because their curative powers, if any, were manifestly below those claimed, is what they claimed. On February 10th, 1954, the FDA filed an action on libel of information pursuant to U.S. Code Title 21, Section 332A, seeking an injunction against further introduction into interstate commerce or misbranding of orgone energy accumulators. Reich declined to enter an answer or make an appearance in that action. And I want to make sure that they have this quote in this. Basically, he messaged the judge and said that he would not be coming to the trial.
Did he write a letter to the judge, or did he message a judge?
Wrote a letter.
Okay.
He wrote a letter to the judge, and he basically said that he wasn't going to come because the government doesn't have the ability to decide scientific matters. And it doesn't have like the really awesome quote I wanted right here, but it says, this is from him, it says, my factual position in the case, as well as the world of science today, does not permit me to enter the case against the Food and Drug Administration, since such action would, in my mind, imply admission of the authority of this special branch of the government to pass judgment on primordial, pre-atomic, cosmic orgone energy. And that's pretty awesome. He wrote the letter, or the judge, and said, I'm not showing up because you don't have the... You don't have authority over scientific matters.
Yeah, which is totally true. I mean, they shouldn't. I don't know if they do legally or not. But
I would think that the FDA should exist as an organization. If it's supposed to exist, if we're going to have something like that in a free society, it should exist to make sure that people are putting safe stuff in their bodies. Now, these orgone accumulators, if they're scientifically proven to work, then yeah, people should be able to use them.
Well, I mean, Food and Drug Administration doesn't sound like a food, and it doesn't sound like a drug. So I mean, even just like at like the simplest definition, I would think that they would not have authority to say one way or the other.
I think that the reason that they got their little clause into this was because they have authority, quote unquote. They claim authority over medical devices as well.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
And that's what they were calling it.
So I don't know if these accumulators actually work in theory or whatever, but I'd be interested to, since we have the ability nowadays, we could do scientific studies. And we should do scientific studies. We got to have, control groups and things like that. And, have a placebo box and have real boxes and have people try them out and see if they actually work. I think that'd be really cool to try.
Right. One thing about it is, we're going to get into, the government went after him so hard and ended up destroying all his works that explain a lot of stuff that might be, foundational to understand and how these things worked and how they're put together, because he was like having them built, I think that there was a little more to it than the way I described it, just to try to give people an idea of what it was. But the other thing about it is the other thing I meant to say about that is people have been doing that kind of stuff, and a lot of people vehemently disagree that they work, but a lot of people believe that they do work. And we can get into like some other things that people have created on the same ideas, like following the same ideas of Wilhelm Reich.
Maybe it's just placebo, but people should be free to have a placebo if they want to have a placebo.
Right. And placebo is like, that's such an amazing thing your body can do.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. The mind is a powerful tool. I mean, if you believe that a sugar pill is actually going to cure you, then wow, that's powerful.
And then your body does cure itself.
Yeah.
That's just kind of proof of the power of your body.
Yeah, that's the basest of manifestation in like every single thing in our lives. Like we're constantly like, it's not just like thinking it, it's like truly believing it. It's the belief, like that's how things actually work.
Right. It says, on motion of the government, defaults and a decree of injunction were entered. The defendants were perpetually enjoined and restrained from committing the practices set forth in the complaint, meaning that he couldn't continue his work. It says, furthermore, all orgone energy accumulators were ordered recalled to the defendant's place of business in Rangeley, Maine, and they're either destroyed or dismantled under the supervision of the FDA. Additionally, in the words of the First Circuit Court on review of the lower court decision, certain listed descriptive literature pertaining thereof were ordered destroyed. The certain listed descriptive literature included all of Reich's published books, which were ordered withdrawn from the market and prohibited from further sale. But
no, that doesn't sound like it. I mean, I believe it happened, but that doesn't. How is that allowed?
How
is that legal?
Yeah, that sounds
you know what I mean?
very much like government overreach. It sounds like an authoritarian.
Absolutely.
Government wants to control everything and say, "Hey, we got to destroy this. It's too dangerous. We can't have the public access."
It literally sounds like something that the Nazis would do, or like the Soviet Union would do. Like this sounds like communist dictatorship, totalitarian government actions.
I mean, if you think about it, destroying the boxes is pretty, I think, terrible in my opinion. But there are some people that might not agree with that. But I think most people would agree in the United States that it goes against everything that we're supposed to stand for, to destroy literature, to destroy
People should be free to have snake oil if they want to have snake oil.
Right.
Yeah.
603-283-6160 if you have anything to call in and talk to us about. We're almost done with this story, so call right in, 603-283-6160. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Day 74 of the war between Israel and Hamas, and there are fresh signs of a new break in fighting, with Hamas leadership in Egypt for talks on another ceasefire. But the United Nations Security Council has again postponed a vote calling for humanitarian pauses in Gaza amid deep disagreements between countries. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
In what was not a surprise announcement, the president of the UN Security Council communicated another delay in the vote.
The presidency will schedule the adoption for tomorrow morning.
For several days now, the council has been trying to reach consensus on a humanitarian resolution on Gaza. The UAE's ambassador to the UN, Lana Nasseberg, told reporters that high-level discussions are happening between capitals to try and reach a text that will in fact be adopted.
Diplomacy takes time. It means evolving conversations, and people are giving it their attention at the highest levels of the capitals that have leverage on this.
And the UAE ambassador says the objective of this resolution was and always has been to try and positively impact the people of Gaza.
Hamas says 20,000 Gazans have been killed in the Palestinian territory since Israel responded to its attack in October. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, says his country's military wants to mobilize an additional 500,000 people, a move that would mark a dramatic step up as the war there against Russia approaches its 2-year anniversary. In the US, President Joe Biden says there's no question that former President Donald Trump is an insurrectionist, but he says he'll leave the future of the Republican Party frontrunner's presidential campaign in the hands of the country's courts.
Trump an insurrectionist, sir?
Well, I think certainly it's self-evident. You saw it all. Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. There's no question about it. None. Zero. And he seems to be doubling down on about everything.
Donald Trump's asking the US Supreme Court to overturn Tuesday's decision by the Supreme Court in Colorado that ruled him ineligible to run for the presidency on the basis he inspired an insurrection after losing the 2020 election. And the death toll from an earthquake in China has risen to 134 as cold weather hampers search efforts for survivors. The 6.2 magnitude shock struck a poor mountainous area about 1,100 kilometres west of Beijing. Our Asia correspondent is Andrew Wood.
Thousands of rescuers are in Gansu province on the edge of the Tibetan plateau. The earthquake happened at 1 minute to midnight local time on Monday. Residents rushed out of houses into a particularly cold winter night. A rule of thumb is that there are 72 hours following an earthquake to find survivors, and sub-zero temperatures are making this window even shorter.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live. We're back with more. 603-283-6160 is the phone number you can call. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Riley,
and Nikki.
And in the last segment, we were reading this article from what's it called? Reason.com. And this article is actually from the January 1980 issue of Reason magazine, and it's called American Inquisition, which is a good name. The FDA's persecution of Wilhelm Reich. And we're just talking about how messed up it was that this doctor, this psychoanalyst, this pursuer of scientific knowledge had all of his creations taken away that he was using and claiming, and had plenty of happy people claiming that he cured them with this.
It's just really
device.
sad that the government is so eager to prevent people from doing different things with their lives that they want to destroy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even if he was crazy and all of this was fake and made up and
there's plenty of crazy stuff on the internet these days that you can buy to supposedly cure certain things, so
make things bigger or smaller.
Yeah.
And, it's probably all
and
fake.
I think
or a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think nowadays a lot of companies have to be really careful with making any sort of medical promises, or unless it is actually proven and the FDA approves it. You know what I mean? They need to go through the proper channels because I know a lot of like vitamins and a lot of natural therapies that probably actually work. They can't make any claims like that on the packaging or in any of the commercial. Like they have to be very careful about their wording because the FDA will go after them.
Oh, of course they will. And, you know, things have to be scientifically vetted, of course, but at the same time, you know, it's like, you know, if people want to have pills that supposedly cure certain things, people should be free to do that. It's their body, it's their risk, it's their choice.
And basically, because of all this stuff that the FDA does to people if they claim things, they went after Wilhelm Reich. They told him, you must recall all of your boxes, which he had given for free. Like he was getting like donations to do this. He was not charging the people he was healing.
Well, because I'm sure this was like all part of his like experiment. I'm sure he was, it sounded like he was still in like the research phase of it, you know?
Right. And also just if you really care about like helping the world like he did, like he wasn't really doing it for, like he was already taken care of and he was just doing it to heal people.
Yeah.
And so he had a lot of these boxes were actually with the patients. Like they were using it continuously.
Okay.
And obviously that means they wanted to use it, and he was supposed to like call all of them up and tell them like, hey, send it back to my lab. And he ignored it. So, and all of his literature was told that it was going to have to be withdrawn from the market and prohibited from further sales. So that's where we were. So we left off in the last segment, but it goes on. This segment's called Book Burning Old and New. It says, Reich ignored the court injunction. Brought before the court on civil and criminal contempt in May 1956, he was found guilty by a jury of violating the court's prior order and sentenced to 2 years in prison. And that's the thing that sucks. Like, they'll get you in prison by just basically something like this. Like, he absolutely wrote to the judge and said, listen, I am not coming because you don't determine, it can't be determined by edict what is true scientifically. I am not coming because you can't just, figure this out in court.
Yeah, it should be the scientists and people who studied this sort of thing to look into claims like this and say, okay, this is true, this is not.
So yeah.
It's not the government's job to do that for us.
Exactly. So he wrote the judge said that he didn't show up in court.
The
Like
so-called
he said
judge
he wouldn't.
is not science anyway, so.
And they found him guilty of, they didn't find him guilty of lying and tricking people who were sick. No, they found him guilty of violating the court's order to appear. So
yeah,
that's how they get you. Like
that's the thing. Yeah, so they can't actually get you on what you really did, but they will punish you one way or the other.
Right, or they wouldn't be able to.
Rigged. The system is rigged against you.
Like, how are they gonna, get a jury to say, oh, this is completely fake and stuff like that? If he has like a whole bunch of people come in and testify, like, I was sick, now I'm not, and I want to use this. It's helping me, and they don't want to do things like that the way that it's supposed to, the way that they tell us that their own system is supposed to work. No, they have to use these stupid little workarounds. So he got sentenced to 2 years in prison. He appealed the decision, arguing that he was engaged in basic scientific research, which no agency of the government had jurisdiction to interfere with or control. The court replied that the refutation of this contention is obvious from its mere statement. Of course, the United States government has power to forbid and power to take appropriate steps to prevent the transportation and interstate commerce of devices of alleged therapeutic value if they are adulterated or misbranded, they said. I didn't really say quote because I don't know, wasn't obvious to me. But that's what the government replied to him. Reich's books were withdrawn from circulation and his magazine and Oregon Energy accumulators seized and burnt. And by the way, it doesn't get into this in this article. From the documentary I watched, this was the FDA going above and beyond the order. Like, it was ordered that his books be taken out of circulation and not printed until further in the future when things could be figured out, whatever. But the FDA went above and beyond, went to his place where he had all his stuff and all his employees, had them come with him with multiple tons, I think 6 tons of literature, books, instructions, whatever, where he had written stuff down, and they burned it. Like, That's how you know that they don't want you to know something.
Yeah, they're willfully destroying property at this point.
Right.
What year was this?
1957
again?
was when it burned.
1957,
When they
okay.
burned the stuff.
Okay.
I've never heard about any of this, so this is all new to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. They burned the stuff in, 1957. But the court case was 1956. And it says Reich's books were withdrawn from circulation and his magazine and Oregon Energy accumulator seized and burnt in the presence of FDA representatives. In November 1957, after 8 months of imprisonment, Reich died in Lewisburg Penitentiary in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. That's a little sketchy because he wasn't that old, right?
He was 60 years old.
Yeah,
So
that's young.
It's really sketchy.
Yeah,
that is sketchy.
Pretty young.
But a lot of people say that they think that he died of kind of like a broken heart from all this.
Or they killed him.
But that's what I kind of feel.
What was the documentary that you watched called?
I just found it on Odyssey. I could probably find it again by search, or you could search.
I'm just wondering because it's bothering me that I can't remember. Very recently, within the past 1 or 2 years, I watched some sort of documentary or read a book that mentioned him, and it kind of like sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Like I never read any of his books, but I remember like it's probably still in my like save for later Amazon cart because I was like I was interested in it enough to like put his book, like a ton of his books, in my cart. I never interested enough to put it in my cart and save for later, but not interested enough to like actually read it, I guess. Like I never got around to it, but
sometimes you just forget about that and then you're interested in something else the next day.
There's just so many books to read.
There are a lot of books to read. Books are great.
Go on here talking about like, the implications of all this. It says, in 1633, a predecessor of Reich's, a fellow speculator, found himself for the second time called upon to justify his advocacy of heresy. A victim of subtle psychological oppression by the Grand Inquisitors, Galileo Galilei, is that how you say that? Can hardly be faulted for his final disavowal of the heliocentric hypothesis. So he's one of the first people that was like, you know what? I don't believe that the Earth is flat.
No, that's the Earth. I think the heliocentric idea is that the sun goes around the Earth, not the other way around. The Earth, the Earth actually goes around the sun, but people used to believe that the sun went around the Earth.
So he was wrong. He was the one that believed that.
No, he was right because he believed the Earth went around the sun.
Disavowal of the heliocentric hypothesis. Okay, so he believed. Everybody else believed that the Earth went around the sun.
Yes.
I always thought that he was specifically saying that the Earth was not flat.
I think that's been other people. I also think that the heliocentric model is the Earth is the center of the universe, and Galileo was like, no, the Earth is not the center of the universe.
Oh, okay. But see, they're making this comparison about how it's not unlike other people who have had stuff like this happen to them because of the government. But we do have a caller on the line, and that's what this show is about. It's about you can take control of the airwaves and talk about what you want to talk about. Caller, I think that it's Mark. What's on your mind?
Hello, my name's Mark. I'm from Western Pennsylvania. I'm really enjoying the conversation. I wanted to ask, in the last 50 years, I'm an old cranky man. I've noticed that, if there are things out there that really work that would heal us and make us better, health-wise, medical, bodily, physically, spiritually, whatever, things are kind of poo-pooed. And then there's all these snake oils that maybe somebody who has a lot of money, they're putting these, I don't know, this is my conspiracy theory, putting these snake oils into existence.
Right.
But
I think about that too.
Wouldn't this lower the chance that they can make, whoever they are, can make big profits? I mean, American Medical, they have all these student loans, and they have to, and they only treat the symptoms. And then insurance companies don't cover the doctor I go to, and he does muscle testing. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but in the future, can you, tell us about muscle testing? And because it works for me.
I don't know much about it, but I know what it is. Isn't it like basically, well, do you know what it is?
It's a gift.
I think
people have a gift that can do it.
I'm not sure, but this is what my guess is. Like, I'm pretty sure it's like they will like lift your arm up and you say like, my name is Mark because your name is Mark. And then they'll tell you to lift your arm up and say, my name is Nikki. And then you can't move your arm.
That's what I was thinking as well. I've done something like this before. I forget what the woman was calling it, but it was a woman that went to my kickboxing gym. And she specialized it. She called it something else, though. I wish I could remember what she called it. I'll look it up on the break. But
is that basically like what you're talking about, Mark?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for taking my call.
Well, thanks so much for calling.
So,
really interesting call.
With things like muscle testing and foot zoning and energy healing, maybe these are just placebos. But Mark is saying, hey, this is working for me. And he should be allowed to have whatever placebo he wants.
But that's the thing, like, what is just a placebo? For
I
all
feel
we
like
know,
everything is a placebo, honestly.
The medicine
I agree with that. Like,
the medicine that they use on us at a regular hospital could be just a placebo, quote unquote.
And let's get really controversial here and talk about chemotherapy. So to me, chemotherapy is a literal poison for the body. So if I developed cancer and I were to receive radiation or chemotherapy, like the traditional, like modern medicine solutions or cures for cancer or therapies for cancer, I would probably get really, really sick and die. But for someone who like wholeheartedly believes that that is going to cure them, that might actually cure them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I
think
think this can be, extended to like every single thing in life, like our beliefs. And these are like oftentimes very subconscious things. Like it's not always like in our conscious mind, but like our beliefs based off of like, or from early stemming, like into our childhood, all of these like foundational beliefs, like all of these environmental factors that create our core beliefs, like deep, deep inside of ourselves. That is kind of what creates our reality,
yes,
so to
our
speak.
Beliefs,
you know what I mean?
Our beliefs shape our reality, definitely.
So it's like just to give an example, like if I were to think that like money is bad and I don't deserve money because of like things that have happened in my childhood or whatever, like all of these like deep core seated beliefs that I have about money, I'm always going to be poor and I'm never going to be abundant. But if I grew up in a family that had, a very healthy relationship with money, and I kind of, you know what I mean? Like those sort of things is going to attract everything into our lives. So I think like the true deep core beliefs in regards to literally everything, health, wealth, like what type of car we drive, what kind of house, like what kind of partner.
How we show up in the world. What kind of partner we have.
Absolutely.
Our relationship with that partner.
Right.
Yeah.
All sorts of
like,
things. Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Like, like you'll have somebody who's like, wow, like I'm always attracting these jerks. Like every single guy I date is a jerk. And I've had like 6 ex-husbands and I'm a good person and I have a positive outlook on life. Like, why am I attracting all of this crap into my life? It's completely subconscious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, those are the things, and it's not impossible to heal. Like we can heal this, but it takes that deep inner work. And I think like every single thing in our life stems from that.
Inner work is really hard. I mean,
absolutely.
I've been doing a lot of inner work over the last few years, working with mushrooms and ayahuasca and these sorts of things. And it's challenging. It's challenging because no one wants to go to an ayahuasca ceremony thinking, oh, I'm going to puke and cry in front of all these people and it's going to be so healing. People don't want to do this. Except we do want to go through these experiences. I mean, ayahuasca is no party drug, and I wouldn't take it for a party. But, it's worth it. It's worth the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think we need to use like any sort of substances or mushrooms or ayahuasca or anything like that. I think that's a shortcut. I don't even want to call it a shortcut. Well, I mean, like, but it can be. It's a tool that we can use.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
And I think every tool is valid, whether you want to spend time in scriptures or prayer or whatever to work with that.
Yeah.
Great.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that it's like if somebody is very left-brained, everything is just material, that would be the perfect method for them because they need to see kind of that. Like, how else could you just describe to somebody / give them a new perspective where they can believe that, like, oh, there's more to this reality than what you see and perceive with your ears and eyes every day.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it can be a good starting point. Like, I know of some people who took DMT and it really opened their eyes to, like, what all of the possibilities of the world are. And sometimes people take that experience and they run with it and they start really diving deep into their, like, interpersonal selves and doing that work. Yeah. And then some people, I know tons of people who took DMT, like, hard launched, like, saw all of this stuff, like, saw the universe folding in on itself and, like, went to source, right? But then they stopped there.
Yeah.
And then they just didn't do anything after that. And they were like, well, that was cool. Like, I saw, like it's where a time and space meets. Like, I saw the
and that's really cool that you saw that. But now what do you do about it? What are you doing to fetch water and chop wood?
Exactly.
Yeah,
now what?
That's what they call, like, needing to, I forget what the word is I was about to say, just like needing to integrate it afterwards.
Oh, yeah. Integration.
Absolutely.
Integration. I mean, the trips are fun, or maybe not fun, but they're helpful. They're fantastic. But the trip is not the most important part of the journey. It's the integration afterward. It's working through your emotions and journaling and meditating or praying or whatever, and having a practice of integration to work through all of this.
Absolutely.
And work through all your traumas that still come up afterward.
Well, we do have a caller on hold. Anonymous caller, what's on your mind?
Yes, I have a question regarding the discussion going on with medications and placebos. I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Sure, what's your name?
In the room correctly. My name's Stefan. I'm calling in from Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Stefan.
What's on your mind? Or what? Sorry, what's your question?
Yeah. So, do any of you personally believe that there is no distinction between a medication and a placebo?
I don't believe that. That's not something that I've sat around and, like,
I think that's an interesting question. It's hard to say. Like, I'm sure there are medications that are really effective at treating certain conditions, but at the same time, if you don't believe they're going to be helpful, how are you going to use those medications effectively to solve the problem?
Yeah, that's called, like, the nocebo, right? Like, the opposite, where something could work for you, but then you don't believe in it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work for you.
You know what? I'm going to be honest. I don't know, because I have seen people, like, even like in my work as a nurse, right? Like, I study medications, I administer medications. And I do see, like, let's use an inhaler for an example. So someone's having an asthma attack and I give them a rescue inhaler of albuterol and it stops their, like, that is me watching an actual medication working.
But have you ever seen
that works?
Have you ever seen a medication, like, completely heal a disease? That's what I think is, like, kind of missing in the medical industry.
No, because that isn't what medications are for.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Medications are to treat the symptoms rather than
yes,
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Exactly.
So I'm saying that, like, people can actually, like, heal themselves from their diseases with the power of their mind and placebos, if you read Joe Dispenza's work. But I've never heard of that happening in the medical industry. And that's just some thoughts I have about it. But no, I don't go around believing things that I don't have any kind of proof for. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I was just trying to clarify that. I'm sorry, I forget the name of the second female host. I know your name, Bonnie.
Nikki.
Who's the other one? Okay, so quick question. You mentioned something about chemotherapy being a placebo earlier. Did I hear that correctly?
No. So that's not exactly what I meant. I was kind of using it as an example. So, like, more about, like, deep-seated beliefs, right? So, like, I have such a deep-seated belief that it's poison. That it's poison, right? So like chemo, and it really, I guess, and I will, like, wholeheartedly say, like, yes, it is poison. And even, like, in my medical background, like, learning about like oncology and chemotherapy in nursing school, like, that is the point of it, right? To poison the cancer cells, but it also poisons your healthy cells as well. So I have such a deep-seated belief that if I were to have those medications administered to me, that it would kill me. So that's probably what would happen. And then someone who is like, nope, I trust the medical model, like, this is going to cure me, it might cure them. So it's not, I mean, I wouldn't call it a placebo because it's, like, a legitimate medication that they, like, I mean, whether you believe it's going to heal you or not, it's going to make you sick. It's literally poisoning your body. But yeah, that was a long answer just to say no, I didn't call it a placebo.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Is that all you had? All right, hang up. Well, we also have, it looks like, oops, dang it, I just hung up on Ricky while I was calling him Riley.
Oh, no, well.
Ricky, if you're hearing this right now, I didn't mean to hang up on you, and you can call back.
We'll get you on there.
But, anyways, continue on. Well, let's see if this is him or Squidward calling. If it's Squidward, I'm not going to answer it yet. All right.
Squidward.
So, basically, one thing I wanted to say about the original caller's point, Mark, was I think the same thing. That's such a funny thing. Like, I haven't really, like, how do I say it? I haven't really brought it to the front of my mind, if that makes sense. But I think that a lot, that idea that maybe they, quote unquote, put out things that are like crappy, fake, like made to even look like it would appeal to, new wagers, stuff that doesn't work. It would totally make sense that like the big pharma would put that stuff out just to give you the belief that, oh, muscle testing's also fake, and so is all this other stuff, and Wilhelm Reich was probably a quack, and he deserved to have all this stuff burned. But it looks like Ricky called back. Sorry about that, Ricky. I did not mean to hang up on you. I went to answer, and I clicked the wrong button. So what's on your mind, Ricky?
Oh, that's all right. That's all right, Miss Bonnie. These things happen, no doubt. And know that, Brother Riley, how you doing there tonight?
Great, Brother Ricky. How are you?
No doubt. And, of course, Sister Nikki.
Hey.
All right. Well, I got to tell you what's on my mind, and you probably already guessed, I bet. That would be Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, no doubt.
What is that? What is exactly Section 3 of the 14th Amendment?
Well, it's a terrible thing that was created like these things are in 1867 to keep people like Jefferson Davis, as an example, from running for president. They used to be part of the Confederacy. And see, the problem here is Colorado, it's funny because a lower court, this is a pile of crap.
1 second, Ricky. We'll bring you back on. I'm going to put you on hold. 603-283-6160. We'll be back with more. It's Free Talk Live. Don't go anywhere.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Day 74 of the war between Israel and Hamas, and there are fresh signs of a new break in fighting with Hamas leadership in Egypt for talks on another ceasefire. But the United Nations Security Council has again postponed a vote calling for humanitarian pauses in Gaza amid deep disagreements between countries. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
In what was not a surprise announcement, the President of the UN Security Council communicated another delay in the vote.
The presidency will schedule the adoption for tomorrow morning.
For several days now, the Council has been trying to reach consensus on a humanitarian resolution on Gaza. The UAE's ambassador to the UN, Lana Nasabeh, told reporters that high-level discussions are happening between capitals to try and reach a text that will in fact be adopted.
Diplomacy takes time. It means evolving conversations, and people are giving it their attention at the highest levels of the capitals that have leverage on this.
And the UAE ambassador says the objective of this resolution was and always has been to try and positively impact the people of Gaza.
Hamas says 20,000 Gazans have been killed in the Palestinian territory since Israel responded to its attack in October. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, says his country's military wants to mobilize an additional 500,000 people, a move that would mark a dramatic step up as the war there against Russia approaches its 2-year anniversary. In the US, President Joe Biden says there's no question that former President Donald Trump is an insurrectionist, but he says he'll leave the future of the Republican Party frontrunner's presidential campaign in the hands of the country's courts.
Trump an insurrectionist, sir?
Well, I think certainly it's self-evident. You saw it all. Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. There's no question about it. None. Zero. And he seems to be doubling down on about everything.
Donald Trump's asking the US Supreme Court to overturn Tuesday's decision by the Supreme Court in Colorado that ruled him ineligible to run for the presidency on the basis he inspired an insurrection after losing the 2020 election. And the death toll from an earthquake in China has risen to 134 as cold weather hampers search efforts for survivors. The 6.2 magnitude shock struck a poor mountainous area about 1,100 kilometres west of Beijing. Our Asia correspondent is Andrew Wood.
Thousands of rescuers are in Gansu province on the edge of the Tibetan plateau. The earthquake happened at 1 minute to midnight local time on Monday. Residents rushed out of houses into a particularly cold winter night. A rule of thumb is that there are 72 hours following an earthquake to find survivors, and sub-zero temperatures are making this window even shorter.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, getting an update today about the situation in Ukraine. Winter is on the march there, and Ukrainian forces are somewhat stalled in their efforts to push back against the Russians. That's one reason why President Volodymyr Zelensky is continuing to urge the US and its European allies to continue providing him with military assistance well into 2024. Cormac Smith is a former strategic communications advisor to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry.
I don't think either side has the upper hand at the moment. From all reports I hear, the Ukrainians are starting to run short of artillery ammunition and anti-aircraft ammunition and so forth, and this is impacting on how they plan their battle strategies. It's certainly the case, according to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, that the Russians are taking huge casualties, but we've heard reports already that the Ukrainians are being forced to switch from attack to defense. It is difficult for Ukraine at the moment, and of course they're heading into winter as well.
In the United States, gridlock on Capitol Hill is now expected to stretch into January without any agreement on a resumption of financial support for Ukraine. On Tuesday, President Zelensky said that his country can still win the war, but he said that Ukraine is fighting for its life.
Our top stories again. The United Nations Security Council has once more postponed a vote on humanitarian pauses in Gaza amid deep disagreements between countries. Hamas says 20,000 Gazans have been killed in the Palestinian territory since Israel responded to its attack in October. And former President Donald Trump is asking the US Supreme Court to overturn a decision by the Supreme Court in Colorado that ruled him ineligible to run for the presidency. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
Last month, the FDA approved Hallucex, a new class of weight loss drug that helps users avoid overeating by producing nightmarish hallucinations whenever food is around. Hallucex targets the brain's cerebral cortex, stimulating the centers responsible for fear and visual processing. Test subjects reported an unprecedented decrease in appetite and showed dramatic weight loss, with only 18% reporting night terrors or subsequent cardiac arrest.
It's designed to make fatty and sugary foods even scarier. An apple just looks like it has fangs, but a milkshake will threaten you and your family by name.
Earlier incarnations of the drug proved to be too powerful and produced mental states in which test subjects no longer believed that food had ever existed. An unshakable belief that the subject had to eat all of the food on the planet in order to prevent food from rising up and destroying the human race.
No, you don't understand. I have to do this.
Or the conviction that food could be negotiated with diplomatically. With the Lab Report, I'm Aisha Patel.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie.
Riley.
And Nikki.
And this hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash, Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful. That's the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. But Dash paved the way by doing it first nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org, and thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. That's dash.org. So in the last segment, we were talking about, in the last two segments, we've been talking about basically the control the government through the FDA has over the medical industry and how you get healed and how you believe things heal you. And we also had Ricky on the line. Ricky from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You were getting into the third section of the 14th Amendment. Was that it?
That's correct. That's correct. And I might as well start from the beginning. Basically what it is it was enacted, this piece of garbage, in 1867. I think President Jefferson Davis's name, I'm sure, came up. And the idea here is that people that were of the Confederacy could not be president. Now, that's added to the list, that you got to be 35 years old, and also that you got to be free. That's a good one that was made by Thomas Jefferson. Fix Alexander Hamilton, no doubt. But that being said, it is a piece of garbage. But now it's here. And what I find ironic about it.
When you say it's here, what do you mean by that?
Well, they enacted the damn thing. Now here's the thing. Now I'm sitting right here with my battle flag on. Just that alone, I assure you, that thing would pop up if I'd run for president. But that ain't never going to happen, because here's the other thing it was created for. After the war, it's created to. You swear to that. See, Ricky from the Commonwealth can't swear to that. Can't be president. Couldn't be a U.S. senator. Couldn't be a congressman, because I'd be swearing allegiance to the Union. We can't have that, can we? Now,
what is
that's the big thing.
I think it's talking about his Civil War battle flag.
Is this the battle flag? It's not the Southern Cross. It's not the same thing, right?
It is the same thing.
Oh.
I wear a 3x3 one with a border. It's a good one. $256, no doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, it's the same one. Captain Kickass pointed it out, and he's right. It is the same one, and one of the few places you see it is on the hood of the General Lee from the Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh.
That's the white flag, not the square one with no border.
It's the same
not the rectangle
thing, but
one with no border. The
okay, I see it here.
one with no border is the one for the Navy.
Yeah, I
Anyways,
looked this
that
up
aside.
before. Yeah, I looked this up before when you brought it up before, but I couldn't exactly remember. It's basically the Confederate flag, but it's more of a square and it has this white border on the outside. And why is it called the
It's perfect
battle
square.
flag?
It's a battle flag in North Virginia. That's the one that the flag bearer would carry, literally in battle. That was the flag during the Civil War, not the other one. That was there too, but that was for the Navy. But anyways, back to the 14th Amendment. See, the way I see this here, it's really funny what's being said now, what Republicans are saying. I mean, it's here. I mean, they put the damn thing in there. And yeah, Colorado's now saying that Trump is outski from the primaries.
Yeah, we were going to get into that. It's really crazy.
Right. You know what's really funny about the whole thing? Now, that being said, just like things are, we are a republic after all, and you got the union. So that being said, now Colorado said it. Now that is an impact on others. Now it is going to go to the Supreme Court, and they're going to throw in the garbage can because they're just corrupt. There's 6 of them. 6 of them are corrupt. 3 of them are court appointees by Trump. But the funny thing about this that the other Republicans are saying, and these are ones running for office, they're saying, hey, you know what? The people should vote him out of not being president. I'm like, wait a minute. This is your damn happy U.S. Constitution we're talking about. See what I'm talking about with these guys?
Well, so let me just explain to the callers. So we haven't gotten into it yet, but we do have this story that Riley brought in. Apparently, the Colorado Supreme Court has kicked Trump off the state's 2024 primary ballot for, quote, violating the U.S. Constitution.
Trump supposedly committed an act of insurrection.
It says the ruling marks the first time a 14th Amendment challenge to Trump's candidacy has been successful. And it's pretty crazy.
It's strange that you think it would be all or nothing when it comes to that.
Flag would do it. Me just wearing my battle flag would do it. Long live the Confederacy. Now,
I see what you're saying. So you're saying that they would probably kick you off the ballot just for the same type of thing. Well, thank you for the call.
Or I guess they could in theory.
Ricky, maybe they would if they use the same argument.
I'd
if this,
love to
holds
hear
up.
more details about that Trump thing because I've been hearing about it, but I haven't really researched too much into it.
Definitely. I only heard about it tonight when Riley, so I called him Riley and I called you Ricky.
Funny.
Brought this story in.
I've literally only seen memes about it.
Yeah, I've read tweets about it and I found the article about it, so I kind of know what's going on, but at the same time, it's just a crazy story.
I've been happily not on Twitter or Instagram or anything.
Great.
Today I just went and I wanted to post my favorite Odyssey person on Twitter because I want him to have followers, but I haven't been scrolling and I've been logged out for days.
Oh, that's so great. I'm happy for you. I wish I could say the same for myself, but I cannot. But so going back to the Trump thing, I would think it would be an all or nothing thing. You know what I mean? It just seems like it's strange that one state could do this.
Right. That's kind of weird.
It seems like it would be a federal thing, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I, as a libertarian, I think we hold that state rights should trump federal rights. And so my thinking is that this is a primary ballot. The state of Colorado has the right to decide who they want on their primary ballot.
I know what you mean, and I absolutely agree with state rights trump federal rights, but to me it just seems like something that, well, if they can even say that, wouldn't the feds be basically saying, you can't run for president? That seems like we skipped a step. That's all.
I think that's kind of my thought process.
Seems like
it's a little weird.
It seems like a lot of people want to railroad Trump for supposedly committing an act of insurrection, and they're creating this political martyr for the right, because there are people on the right that absolutely adore Trump, and I do not adore Trump. I think he's a horrible human being, a horrible statist, and we would do far worse if we had Trump in power again, in my opinion. That being said, the right are going to see him as a martyr as he's going through the court battles that he's going through, and that may make him a hero in their eyes.
I mean, the way I look at it is I don't really believe in voting. I think all of this is really dumb. But a lot of people are like you said, they're in love with him. He's their martyr. He's they worship him.
Yeah, they hated love the FBI until like last year.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there are tons of people in Colorado who are, have like 17 Trump signs in their yard, like I see all over New Hampshire when I'm driving around the state. And they have the right to vote for him. Like, I think that's just kind of, if we're going to do this whole weird song and dance, like, let's do it. Like, don't take away people's right
I agree
to
with
vote
that. If
for
we're going
who
to do
they
the
want to
song
vote
and
for.
dance and pretend that the so-called president has any so-called authority over us, and
just rig it less.
Yeah, let's just rig the election. Yeah.
And you know what? Like, so I was telling somebody this other day. So I was somewhere. I think I was actually in Massachusetts, technically, like right on the border. And there was this house that we've all seen those houses that are just like decked out in Trump. But these people, it was like nothing I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
Every square inch of their house had some sort of Trump flag,
Whoa.
Trump
Oh my
sign.
gosh,
They had cardboard cutouts of Donald Trump
insane.
and Melania. I mean, the
That
Melania,
is
like you got to
absolutely
special
insane.
order that one.
Yeah.
You can probably get a Donald Trump cardboard cutout very easily. But Melania, you got to special order her. They had lights. Like, it was like an
Wow.
attraction. And my biggest regret is not turning around. I was driving, right? So my
Taking a
biggest
picture.
regret is not turning around and taking a picture. And I want to go, like, I dropped a pen and I'm like, I need to go find this house again just because it was so funny. But my point is, if people are that obsessed with him, like, people do that, like, with, like, Jesus decorations for Christmas. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
that's, like, the
But
level.
It is like their god. Yeah, I bet they're
Yeah,
not even
like,
doing
they-
it for Jesus.
They
for Christmas.
worship him. Like, that's the thing. So it's like, if somebody loves him that much, I really do think that person, like, if they have the right to vote for anyone, they should be able to vote for Donald Trump, honestly.
Yeah, they should.
You know what I mean? Like,
At one point, or at some point, they're going to be able to claim that it's like going against their religious freedom.
they might. I mean,
'Cause,
yeah.
like-
if he's their Lord and Savior, then it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I've never seen anyone deck out their house like to
never.
that level for
Yeah.
Jesus. Like,
No, that's
you
the
know,
thing. Yeah.
or Muhammad.
Or any other political candidate. Are you kidding me?
I guess
It
so.
just
and
seems
it's-
like Trump has become this savior figure in American minds, and it's really scary to me because
It is scary, yeah.
he's been saying some crazy stuff like immigrants are ruining the blood of America,
And we should bomb Mexico. Like, he got
Well, I
that
mean, I
idea
think
from
a lot of-
Vivek, right? He
I mean,
he
it's
got that
just
idea from
icky. These
Vivek,
people are
and
just
now
icky.
all of
I
them are
was about
saying
to
that.
say, like, Vivek said the same thing.
I
so
can't stand him either. I really think he's gross and
So
ugly.
here's the thing about presidential elections. They're more popular than the local elections, and yet the president of the United States affects you less than your local so-called governments
Absolutely.
do.
Right.
And so, Mr. and Mrs. America, as you listen to the show and you're more excited about the presidential election, thinking it's the most important of my lifetime, I'm here to tell you, no, it's not. I really don't care. It's all nonsense to me. I don't care who the thug in the White House is. It's all just nonsense to me. Now, if you want to get more obsessed about your local elections than the so-called presidential election, great. We can have a conversation because those conversations are more important than the stupid moron in the White House.
Yeah, and I honestly don't believe that, and this is going into like kind of conspiracy theory territory, but I don't actually believe that whoever the president is has any actual power. Like, there is a entire team of people behind them that are making the decisions for them. Like, you want to tell me that Joe Biden is making any decision?
Probably
he
not.
He
He's
doesn't decide what he eats. He doesn't decide what he like wears.
To the point
I can't even believe that he's a real person. Like, I think he might actually be some sort of like robot. You know what I mean?
I don't know if I
Like,
agree with you on that. I think he's a real person.
You know what
it's just so interesting that they keep trotting this
I mean,
old
he's at
dude
least
out.
like
They
has
don't
dementia. You know what I
make-
mean? Like,
They don't, I don't know why I said make, but earlobes don't just suddenly dislocate.
yeah, they don't make earlobes like that.
Yeah, they don't. That's what I was gonna say. They don't make earlobes that dislocate. So I don't know if
I
you've
have
heard
no
of
idea
this,
what you're
Riley.
talking
Yeah,
about.
So,
I don't know if you've
yeah.
heard of this. But
I have the conspiracy that
Yeah.
it's like not the real Joe Biden and he like died or something and
they
they
have
replaced
pictures
him.
where older pictures of him. I can't remember which way it is, but so older pictures of him either have his earlobes connected to the part of your face/neck that your ear is next to. Like, for example, mine are connected. Well, that doesn't make sense because you can't see what I'm doing over here. But mine are connected, but there is another type of ear that a human being could be born with that is kind of, it just hangs down, the bottom of the lobe, like where you pierce it hangs down. And there is pictures where Joe Biden is younger, or like, just like still old, but like 20 years ago, where his earlobes are disconnected, right? But whoever is the president right now has connected earlobes. Or it could be the other way around, where they used to be connected, now they're disconnected. But it's absolutely insane if you like compare those pictures side by side, how different his ears look. And it's like, nobody gets plastic surgery to get different types of ear.
And maybe he does. Maybe he's an exception.
He could be. I mean, that's just as crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like that, as it being a clone. But I don't know. I'm not really like, oh, I totally believe that. Like, it's like we were saying earlier, I don't go around believing that Joe Biden is a clone, but
it just, either way, it doesn't even matter.
Right.
That's kind of like how I
point.
think about it. I'm like, it's kind of funny. I'll entertain these things.
Right.
Just because, like, why not? But either way, like, whether this is the Joe Biden from, like, honestly, I hope it's not the Joe Biden from like 40 years ago, because he was a major piece of crap.
He was
you know
a
what
horrible
I mean?
drug warrior, that's for sure.
Honestly, he's still a bad person.
Yeah.
Bad person then, bad person now. But he was just more racist.
He's like racist
He was
openly.
more openly racist back then, I guess.
Well, we can get into this story if you guys want and see if there's anything else that we haven't really covered about this. It says, so this makes a little more sense why Riley was, I mean, oh my gosh, Ricky, the caller, was talking about this. Apparently has a lot to do with the 14th Amendment. So this is from NBCnews.com. Colorado Supreme Court kicks Trump off the state's 2024 primary ballot for violating the U.S. Constitution. In a bombshell decision, Colorado Supreme Court on Tuesday ruled that former President Donald Trump's candidacy in the state's primary next year is prohibited on constitutional grounds. The first of its kind ruling stems from a lawsuit that focused a little-known provision in the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Similar challenges in other states have proven unsuccessful. Quote, a majority of the court holds that President Trump is disqualified from holding office, the office of the president, under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the United States, unquote. And that's what the Colorado, oh my God. So the Colorado ruling said. Because he is disqualified, it would be a wrongful act under the election code for the Colorado Secretary of State to list him as a candidate on the presidential primary ballot. But it does make me wonder, like, can people just do a write-in campaign for him?
Oh, I'm sure they could, and they probably will.
Probably.
So he just can't be listed on the ballot.
Which really does hurt his chances, because as we know, people just go and choose the name that they think looks best or something.
Yeah, they pick the R or the D.
Right.
Well, I guess for the primary, there's, you get a few R's to choose from.
Yeah.
But.
Says, in its opinion, the court explicitly stated that Secretary of State Jenna Griswold may not list President Trump's name on the 2024 presidential primary ballot, nor may she count any write-in votes cast for him. Whoa.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't seem constitutional.
Right.
That's a little concerning. Like, why?
That's going even further.
Like, why shouldn't people be allowed to vote for someone?
It's crazy.
So, is Colorado a swing state?
I don't know.
I think Colorado
I'm
primarily votes
Democrat?
to the left.
Yeah, I think of them as Democrats.
Okay. Because I was just wondering because if we all know, like, these elections are, like, so close, especially for, like, the final presidential election. It's like right up there, like neck and neck, 50-50 most of the time. Like within a few percent is which way it goes, right?
I mean, it's a huge state, and it's populated on Montana, which is the same size.
So my point is, if they sabotage him on this one state, that could be the make or break whether he wins or loses the primary.
Right.
Maybe all it would take is one state,
and
since it's always so close, It
might be they might have done this very strategically. Like, maybe they were looking like they were going to vote for Trump, and it's a pretty big state, so they have more I forget what they call it, but
more of the electoral college.
Yeah, electoral college.
Yeah, they have more of those.
More votes in the electoral college.
Yeah,
I don't know
which is so dumb. The electoral college shouldn't be a thing.
I did not know how that worked when I was a kid. It was
really
not until I was like almost old enough to vote that I learned that you don't just count how many votes actually got voted.
I learned that at some point in public school. They taught us about the Electoral
sure
College,
that
and
I
I just
did.
remember it like being
I didn't,
really
internalize it.
Yeah, like it was just really complicated the way they explained it, and we were all
it does complicate the election process because you have certain representatives from certain states, and it's based on population size. So states like New York and California definitely are going to run the elections a lot more heavily than states like Montana or Idaho or Pennsylvania.
It seemed like it might have made sense like 200 years ago. You know what I mean? But it doesn't make sense anymore, I don't think.
It's kind of like what you were saying earlier. Like, if we're going to do this whole song and dance, just do it right. Like, if we're going to be a democracy, it should be it should be the majority. Not that I really think that that's a good thing, but
if we're going to do it, if they are claiming that this is a democracy,
right?
Like, if we're going to do it, let's do it. Let people vote for who they want to vote for and just count how many votes there are.
And the main thing that I did not know was basically there is this, like, they're not mandated to vote. The person, whoever it is, that is this electoral college person who puts in the vote, isn't mandated to put in the one who actually won their landmass's vote.
Yeah.
Like,
they vote for whoever they want.
They could end up doing that. Like, every single time, I think in history, they've basically always voted for who their area voted for. But they don't have to. And that's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, that makes it even crazier. But it says, in its opinion, the court explicitly stated that, I just read that. The court put its decision on hold until January 4th to allow for further appeals. So I guess it's still kind of up in the air. But if it doesn't get appealed by January 4th, which isn't that far from now, it might be set in stone. It also said that if the matter is pursued before the U.S. Supreme Court, pursued before the U.S. Supreme Court before that date, the pause will remain in effect during that time, and Colorado will be required to include Trump's name on the primary ballot pending action by the Supreme Court.
So here's what's interesting about this whole thing. So I've been reading some tweets from people who fled communist China, and they're looking at the situation as a repeat of what other communists and socialist and dictatorship governments have done in the past, where they start removing certain candidates to rig the election a little bit.
That makes sense. I mean, it's not just China. Like, all kinds of authoritarian governments have done this. I had this story for a long time. I'm pretty sure I read it on a Thursday. Apparently, there was a primary vote in Venezuela, and they just decided to delete that. Basically, like, there was a primary vote for the opposing party, whatever it is called there. Opposing as in, like, the person who's currently in charge is not part of that party. They didn't like the winner, so they just kind of deleted it, and they're going to do it all over again.
That's insane. So,
crazy.
Maybe America is sliding into totalitarianism, maybe not.
And it's funny because, when we read that story, sorry, I cut you off, but when I read that story, it's just occurring to me, I said, people like to act like stuff like this can't happen in America, but it can. And now, yesterday, this happened.
Yeah, it's just interesting that, whether we're sliding into totalitarianism or not, it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. I mean, are people in Colorado who really want to vote for Trump going to be allowed to vote for him? It's going to be interesting to find out.
I think so too. And it's like, on Free Talk Live, we don't talk a lot about this kind of news usually, but this is pretty big and crazy and just kind of pulls back the curtain, and you can see the man behind the curtain when
you can see the controlling parties and the controlling authoritarian figures.
Definitely. Okay, it's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160 is the number. More coming up.
Shortly after accidentally clicking like on nearly 400 of his ex-girlfriend's Facebook photos earlier today, panicked area man Adam Nuensing spoke to Onion reporters about his mistake.
Damn it, I was just looking at one of Rebecca's Instagram photos that showed up on my newsfeed, and the next thing I know, I just liked every single photo that she posted over the last 4 years. I didn't mean to, but it just kind of happened.
The 28-year-old told reporters that he had browsed through 14 of his ex-girlfriend's photo albums while inadvertently clicking like on each and every picture, including dozens from her office picnic last fall, her trip to New York in 2010, and a photo of her and her first boyfriend from 2006.
I thought if I went back and clicked unlike on all those pictures that maybe she wouldn't get any notifications, But then I saw some other albums, and I ended up liking 80 more photos and shared them on my wall. Shit.
This is the Onion News Network.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Day 74 of the war between Israel and Hamas, and there are fresh signs of a new break in fighting, with Hamas leadership in Egypt for talks on another ceasefire. But the United Nations Security Council has again postponed a vote calling for humanitarian pauses in Gaza amid deep disagreements between countries. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
In what was not a surprise announcement, the President of the UN Security Council communicated another delay in the vote.
The presidency will schedule the adoption for tomorrow morning.
For several days now, the Council has been trying to reach consensus on a humanitarian resolution on Gaza. The UAE's ambassador to the UN, Lana Nasabeh, told reporters that high-level discussions are happening between capitals to try and reach a text that will in fact be adopted.
Diplomacy takes time. It means evolving conversations, and people are giving it their attention at the highest levels of the capitals that have leverage on this.
And the UAE ambassador says the objective of this resolution was and always has been to try and positively impact the people of Gaza.
Hamas says 20,000 Gazans have been killed in the Palestinian territory since Israel responded to its attack in October. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, says his country's military wants to mobilise an additional 500,000 people, a move that would mark a dramatic step up as the war there against Russia approaches its 2-year anniversary. In the US, President Joe Biden says there's no question that former President Donald Trump is an insurrectionist, but he says he'll leave the future of the Republican Party frontrunner's presidential campaign in the hands of the country's courts.
Trump an insurrectionist, sir?
Well, I think certainly they're self-evident. You saw it all. Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. There's no question about it. None. Zero. And he seems to be doubling down on about everything.
Donald Trump's asking the US Supreme Court to overturn Tuesday's decision by the Supreme Court in Colorado that ruled him ineligible to run for the presidency on the basis he inspired an insurrection after losing the 2020 election. And the death toll from an earthquake in China has risen to 134 as cold weather hampers search efforts for survivors. The 6.2 magnitude shock struck a poor mountainous area about 1,100 kilometres west of Beijing. Our Asia correspondent is Andrew Wood.
Thousands of rescuers are in Gansu province on the edge of the Tibetan plateau. The earthquake happened at 1 minute to midnight local time on Monday. Residents rushed out of houses into a particularly cold winter night. A rule of thumb is that there are 72 hours following an earthquake to find survivors, and sub-zero temperatures are making this window even shorter.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number for you to call. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Riley,
and Nikki.
And I want to tell you about Fork Fest. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Fork Fest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Fork Fest forum. You can find those links you can find the links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party. So in the last segment, I don't know why I couldn't think of that word right now, we were talking about what Colorado is doing, and just to like give the listeners a quick summary. Basically, Colorado yesterday, the Supreme Court of Colorado decided that they would now not have Trump on the primary election. It's on hold. The decision is a little bit on hold, but lots of people are pretty freaked out about this because it kind of sounds like something, communist China, they'll say, would do.
Or Venezuela.
Yeah.
Or some other crazy country like that.
Just some really totalitarian country would totally take a popular president off the election.
Oh, yeah.
And this is definitely adding more fuel to the fire of Trump lovers because he's such a martyr.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that's the thing. Every time they do Trump dirty, it makes his, then they, double up on their signs.
Yeah,
there was
they
that
do.
person. Even just looking around, I'm like, looking at the houses, like, this is insane. There was, the person in Fitzwilliam that spray painted their house. Their actual house, they spray painted it. Trump 2024.
Whoa.
I think they painted over it now, so it was like a temporary
I
thing.
wonder if the government made them, like the town.
I doubt it. I think they probably just, especially like small town like that in New Hampshire, but I think they were probably about to paint their house anyways, so they're like, yeah, let's spray paint it Trump
funny.
2024.
Well, apparently that happened in New Hampshire. I'm not sure which town off the top of my head, but Ian would talk about this. Apparently during Ron Paul running for president, somebody had put a nice mural on their own garage wall or door of Ron Paul, said Ron Paul 2008 or whatever. And the government went after them for it and forced them to
That's crazy.
cover it up.
I know it's a thing
crazy,
in New England with historical houses. There's some, if your house is historical and it's in a certain area of town, in some historical towns, it can only be painted white or an approved color. You can't change the color of something, you have to keep, which is strange.
You don't own it. That's
but
crazy.
I doubt that was the case with the Ron Paul thing. So it's not a super common thing. It's your house has to be legit from the 1600s and to be able to for them to make those rules.
It could have also been an HOA thing, which would just kind of suck.
Yeah, that would
but
make
not
sense.
be the same.
Yeah.
I can't remember off the top of my head. Ian would know. But I wanted to move on to this other story Riley brought in from The Guardian. Satanic Temple condemns vandalism of its statue by Christian military veteran. Is this the one in Iowa's state capital?
This is a huge story last week. We can get into the story, but it's an illustration of freedom of religion.
Right.
The Christian world loves to tell how they're all about freedom of religion. But let's get into the story and we'll discuss the freedom of religion that they supposedly believe in.
I wish that I had thought to bring up this tweet. I saw a tweet by I guess it's not called tweet anymore. I hate that.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
No, it's still
I'm still calling it Twitter and tweet.
Yeah, no.
I hate it. Apparently, Elon Musk changed the name to X.com. Just the letter X.com, and that's so stupid.
It's stupid.
So, I just saw a funny headline. Funny to me because I guess I'm a child. But let me move on to this one. It says, Satanic Temple condemns vandalism of its statue by Christian military veteran. Michael Cassidy arrested over tearing down of satanic altar, a symbol of humanism and anti-authoritarianism at Iowa Capitol. And the thing I was going to say I wish I had thought to bring up was there was a state rep of Iowa who was a Republican and a Christian who was actually defending this thing. He was saying, listen, I think it's disgusting. I hate it so much. He's talking to his Christian followers, and he was like, but the thing that we need to understand is if we have the power to tear this down, well, Satanists have the power to keep God out of, people from praying in schools, stuff like that. I don't know if that's the example he gave.
That people don't realize is
he really had a good understanding of
when
freedom.
You prohibit someone from having a display. If you believe that you have the right, let's say that you want to put a statue of Jesus Christ in your state capitol building. What if I want to put a statue of a jaguar with horns or tail and call it Mother Ayahuasca? I mean, What right
That's
do you
something
have
you've seen,
to...
Riley?
What's that?
I was joking. I was like, is that something you've seen?
I
Seemed really specific.
But it's just interesting, like, why can't I do that and you can have your statue of Jesus? I mean, we have this warped understanding of what freedom of religion is in America.
People think that a lot of Christians really think that freedom of religion just means like I'm free to be a Christian and
Everyone else
forget
has to
everything
comply.
else. Right. Everybody else.
No, that's not the case.
Well, let's get into it. I agree, Riley. It says, the leader of an organization whose satanic altar at Iowa's state capitol was torn down by... And the thing is, back when I read that statement, that was all I knew about this. I didn't hear about this update that it had been torn down. It says, it was torn down by a Christian military veteran on Thursday, has dismissed the vandalism as a real act of cowardice, which is a great way to put it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Being afraid of new ideas, kind of like the book burning we started off talking about at the beginning of the show. By the way, I'm going to put that whole article about Wilhelm Reich that we started off with in all of our social media. I'm going to try to post that today because it was just really long, and I feel like we had a lot of good things to say about that story, and so I just kind of wanted to move on.
So find it at social.freetalklive.com, which links us to the Mastodon server that we have.
Yes, thank you, Riley. I always forget to kind of give that one out.
Yeah.
So yes, it was an act of cowardice is what the organization, I guess it wasn't necessarily maybe the Satanic Temple is the organization they're referencing. So it says, there's a certain point, this is a quote, there's a certain point at which we need some adults in the room to tell people what liberal democratic values are, what their value is, why we uphold them, what they're good for, and they need to stand up for these values, or we're going to further degenerate in our polarism towards autocracy, the co-founder of the Satanic Temple, Lucian Greaves, said. Well, I wonder if his name's really Lucian. Sounds like Lucifer.
A little bit, yeah. Lucian Greaves.
Oh, Lucian, that's probably what it is. Because there's like the name Lucius I've seen, but I've never seen this.
Yep.
The Satanic Temple obtained permission from Iowa's government to erect a statue of a goat-headed figure at the state capitol in Des Moines, along with the group's 7 fundamental tenets, which call on members to act with compassion and empathy toward all and declare people's bodies as inviolable. And I think that's how you say that. The statute and its association, it does say statute, but the statute and its association with the Satanic Temple ignited a fierce debate over the breadth of the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment, which provides Americans their core freedoms of speech and religion. And that's kind of a messed up sentence. It doesn't provide you those freedoms. You absolutely have those freedoms.
Oh, absolutely. You have those freedoms. It's
no matter what.
The government is saying, oh, we recognize that you have these freedoms in paper.
And that's how people need to think of that. You don't have a right because the Constitution says so. You have a right
have that
because
right
you're
inherently.
human.
It's just the government saying, we recognize that you have that right.
Exactly.
We won't kill you for it.
Yes.
Allegedly. Yeah. Iowa's Governor Kim Reynolds issued a statement calling the Satanic Temple's display absolutely objectionable, but suggested it was one a free society should allow to stand. Reynolds called on all those of faith to pray alongside her and recognize the traditional display honoring Jesus' birth also put up at the Capitol. Wow, that's even crazier. So they're also putting up like a nativity scene, and they're still angry that there's different religions thing up.
It's ridiculous.
It's kind of crazy. Says Reynolds met intense criticism from conservative circles who believed she should leverage her executive powers to remove the display. And that's also how everybody was responding in the comment section to the state rep I was referencing. They were like, if you're a real Christian, you would be against this thing. You need to take it down. Like, majority of Christians seem to act that way. Like,
yeah, and it's really a display of their ignorance of what freedom of religion is. I mean, if you're advocating destroying someone else's religious property, whether it's a temple, whether it's an altar, whether it's whatever, then really, what right do you have to have your religious rights recognized?
Even like during the beginning of this war, I guess you would call it, it's really like a genocide going on in Israel, a lot of Christians were showing their true colors when they were calling in, saying, like, directly on the show, saying to me, well, they believe that their God gave them this land. So what? Should they listen to you or should they listen to their God? Like, people don't actually
when people
believe
drag
in
God
freedom.
into a discussion, I have to wonder, do you really have a leg to stand on? I mean, Muslims are going to claim that God gave them the land too. So which God are we praying to?
And it's like, wasn't it a thing where suicide bombers were saying that God was telling them to kill themselves and sacrifice themselves and like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know if that always has like standing.
People just don't think of things as like the principle of the matter. That's the same principle.
Yeah.
The same idea.
No, and this is totally a conservative thing where it's like, I only care about like my right. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They're like, they're all about freedom.
We need traditional Christian values in America because America's a Christian. No, America's not a Christian nation.
It wasn't supposed to be.
But and that's the thing too, where they're like, they're all about freedom and they're all about rights, but it's just the ones that they care about. They don't care about your rights. They only care about their rights.
Right. That seems to be a huge thing with a lot of conservatives, like most conservatives. I wouldn't say all Christians, but definitely almost all conservatives.
Yeah.
So yeah, the governor Reynolds was receiving criticism from conservative circles for people who believe she should leverage her executive powers to remove the display. Conservatives staged prayer rallies and protests around the goat-headed statue. Okay. Statue has 2 T's, so I was wrong earlier. It just keeps looking like statute to me. So they staged prayer rallies and protests around the goat-headed statue, all of which are consistent with the First Amendment. Tensions boiled over on Thursday when authorities said a Christian and military veteran tore the Satanic Temple statue's head off before surrendering to law enforcement. And he probably felt like such a hero. It's like so lame. Yeah. It's like just so I would say the same thing if a Muslim or somebody went up and tore the Jesus baby out of the nativity scene and acted like they were like a hero for that. It's
such
stupid. It's definitely a display of cowardice and like small-minded, small manness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
I just remember being one of those types of religious zealots back in my day and being like, I just gotta have my religious rights and all that stuff and things like that. And it's like, nowadays I just don't really care.
Right. Like, I want my religious rights, but I'm just not dumb enough to think that means other people can't.
I'm just not dumb enough to go trample on your religious rights just so I can feel superior and say I'm God's chosen here. You're going to do as I say.
Like,
it's just disrespectful, It's inappropriate.
Who in this situation looks more like somebody who is behaving in a way that is like superior morally, not necessarily this guy who broke somebody's property. Like, do you not believe in property rights? It's crazy. Like,
he probably doesn't. Most people don't.
It's on government property, but like it's a statue that belongs to the Satanic Temple, whether you like it being on the government property or not.
You can see Satan as the symbol of evil, but the symbol of evil has as much right to exist as the symbol of good, and for a lot of people the symbol of good is Christ. And so these things have a right to exist in the world. If you hide them, if you hide evil from the world, you're going to not see good in the world. You're going to become the evil that you're trying to hide.
And isn't the whole point like the light is able to overcome the darkness? You know what I mean? Like, isn't that like the whole point of religion?
Why worry about it?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it should be strong enough without even with this goat statue sitting there, people should be, like perfectly happy with their religious, being, aka God. And the other thing about it is just it's a typical like tragedy of the commons story. It's like so you've been fighting to have governments steal money from people and give it to a fund that is taking care of this building called the Capitol building, and you're mad when people want to act like it's a common area. So what? Do you not believe in taxes now? Because that would be a great way to, and public property, quote unquote, which doesn't make sense and is kind of a oxymoron. Or like, because that would be the more logical way to go about this. Be like, hey, wait, I'm just realizing I don't want my money to go towards a satanic statue. So maybe I shouldn't believe in stealing people's money, including my own, and giving it to have this thing called government. In fact, like, if you believe something is evil, like this Baphomet or whatever is statue, it makes more sense to have it at a place like this, because that is truly the place of evil.
The government is the seat of evil. I mean, it makes more sense to have a Baphomet statue or a statue dedicated to Satan at a government facility.
Right. It says tensions boiled over on Thursday when authorities said a Christian and military veteran tore the Satanic Temple's statue's head off before surrendering to law enforcement to be booked with a count of criminal mischief. In a statement on Facebook, the Satanic Temple described the damage as being beyond repair. Quote, the world may tell Christians to submissively accept the legitimization of Satan, but none of the founders of the U.S. would have considered government sanction of satanic altars inside Capitol buildings as protected by the First Amendment, Michael Cassidy told RepublicSentinel.com, a conservative news outlet, apparently without providing citations to support his assertion. Quote, I saw this blasphemous statue and was outraged.
Blasphemy is free speech.
Right. Said Cassidy, a former U.S. Navy pilot who has previously run for Congress unsuccessfully in Mississippi.
Statist and wannabe politician.
Right. Yep. Wannabe politicians, even worse. My conscience is held captive to the word of God, not to bureaucratic decree, and so I acted. Like,
yeah,
what a
right.
Bitch.
No, you love bureaucratic.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah, you wanted to be part of the government and proclaim your supremacy over somebody based on your religion. Nope.
Right.
That's the thing. And people love the government until it doesn't serve them anymore and it starts trampling on their rights. And listen, that's what it does.
Yeah.
That is the whole purpose. That is the design. So it's like, just because, you know, and they'll say this, they'll be like, oh, if you just follow the law, if you just follow the rules, but then once the rules change and it doesn't serve them anymore, then they're like, oh my gosh.
Right. You gotta go back to the original. This is crazy.
I hate the government now. It's like, really? You weren't saying that like a few months ago.
The funniest part is that the government's always trampling their rights too. They're just like, okay, that's fine. Like, you could take my money. You can own my property.
You can own my property and I'll be a serf and pay taxes to you. But the moment they start refusing to pay taxes, the government's going to come after them.
But that's not their line. Their line is a statue that is a non-living, you know, piece of metal probably, or whatever it's made of, sitting in a certain place. Like, wow, what a big deal. What a line for people. It's so stupid.
It is stupid. It's to me, it's a way to display your hypocrisy. Because what you're basically saying is that you want your religion and your religion alone to be represented in the public square. Well, if I were a Satan worshiper, which I'm not, and I wanted to have Satan in the public square along with your Jesus statues, and you come to me and says this is blasphemy, I want it torn down, then I'm like, you know, I have the freedom of religion.
And that's what these people are saying, and it's actually kind of a little bit sad for them. I mean, I don't really care about anyone's like religion, like to that degree, to the point where I'm like, I just feel a little sad for these people that like they did something non-violent and it was destroyed. Like, property is something that I take more seriously than religion. I'll say it like that, you know?
Bonnie, are you familiar with the parable of the wheat and the tares in the New Testament that Jesus told?
I know that it's like, it started like, I just know that it is now a thing that people use as a, like, he'll separate the wheat from the chaff or whatever.
So I'm using this as an example because here we have, so the parable goes that this farmer is planting wheat in his field, and the story is that this enemy comes along and plants weeds in there when it's probably just natural processes. But regardless, the wheat and the weeds are growing together, and the servants of the farmer are like, well, what do you want to do about this? And the farmer's like, well, let's let everything grow together, and eventually we'll separate them out. Mm-hmm. And so my attitude is, why not have Christianity and Satanism exist in the same square? If there is a God, let's let God sort it out.
Right. And it's kind of like, you know, wouldn't God have... I hate to use these kind of arguments. Like, it sounds like I'm being like an atheist. I'm not an atheist, but I think that if your God was the way that... If God was the way that Christians' Christians' Bible and stuff describes them, and, you know, a lot of early Christians didn't interpret the Bible this way, but it's now been decreed that they must interpret it this way, that there's really an anthropomorphic God out there acting the way that the Old and New Testament describe, especially the Old Testament describes. Well, if that's how it is, don't you think that God could do something like, you know, strike down the statue?
Sure. I mean, if God was so offended by the statue, why didn't God take care of it themselves?
It's just kind of hilarious, honestly. But moving on, it says the founder of the conservative group Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, hailed Cassidy as Satan Slayer on Thursday. No, he actually just broke a statue and that's
pretty
it.
much. Broke a statue. No Satan Slayer. Wow.
It says he pledged $10,000 to Cassidy's legal defense. Wow, way to defend an actual criminal who actually broke property and not be
and
like
also,
a good person at all.
What a waste of $10,000.
Seriously.
Like, you're just gonna throw that in the trash like that?
It's just criminal mischief. It's not like some big deal, and he's not gonna win. Like, he's gonna have to plead guilty. He did it.
Yeah.
You know? It's so stupid. Criminal mischief isn't like gonna put him in jail, I don't think. Unless he has like a huge, history, I guess, whatever it's called. History of committing crimes. I can't think of the word that is. It says Greaves insinuated that Cassidy's actions were little more than... So it didn't even say who that was, except back at the very beginning of the story. But Greaves is that Lucian Greaves person who works for, or is part of the Satanic Temple. It says Greaves insinuated that Cassidy's actions were little more than cowardice dressed up as heroism by an aspiring politician. And that's a great way to put it. It's acting as if they're standing up for us when they're really yielding to the whims of an uncomprehending, undemocratic mob, which is kind of the case. Like, if you believe in democracy and all the stuff that you say you believe in, that the founders, if you believe in what the founders intended, which includes democracy, unfortunately, well, it's not very democratic, and it is very, but a mob, undemocratic mob is a little bit of a oxymoron too, because mob rule is democracy.
So, the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, at least the part where it talks about religion, says that Congress shall make no law establishing a recognition of religion, basically. And so I would interpret that as, it's not up to Congress to say this is the right religion of the land, it's the Christian nation, but instead they should leave that up to the states, and the states should adopt, in my opinion, they should continue to adopt that clause because it's important. So the state or the institution of government should not be promoting one religion above another. And by doing so, the Satanic Temple has as much right to put a statue of a goat on government property, which is a common area. We've discussed this time and time again. They have that right. And by someone coming in and saying, this is a Christian nation, we've got to destroy this, they're essentially saying you don't have a right to exist. And I come from Mormonism, and Mormonism has been historically oppressed by various governments because of, not being Christian enough or whatever, and it's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and it's messed up. People believe a thing. It has nothing to do with the government. The government should not have any power to dictate what people can act on as far as their religion. 603-283-6160. We're going to go into the calls when we come back. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too,
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
We just can't have people floating about unregulated,
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, Mark at freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Day 74 of the war between Israel and Hamas, and there are fresh signs of a new break in fighting, with Hamas leadership in Egypt for talks on another ceasefire. But the United Nations Security Council has again postponed a vote calling for humanitarian pauses in Gaza amid deep disagreements between countries. Jody Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
In what was not a surprise announcement, the President of the UN Security Council communicated another delay in the vote.
The presidency will schedule the adoption for tomorrow morning.
For several days now, the Council has been trying to reach consensus on a humanitarian resolution on Gaza. The UAE's ambassador to the UN, Lana Nasabeh, told reporters that high-level discussions are happening between capitals to try and reach a text that will in fact be adopted.
Diplomacy takes time. It means evolving conversations, and people are giving it their attention at the highest levels of the capitals that have leverage on this.
And the UAE ambassador says the objective of this resolution was and always has been to try and positively impact the people of Gaza.
Hamas says 20,000 Gazans have been killed in the Palestinian territory since Israel responded to its attack in October. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, says his country's military wants to mobilise an additional 500,000 people, a move that would mark a dramatic step up as the war there against Russia approaches its 2-year anniversary. In the US, President Joe Biden says there's no question that former President Donald Trump is an insurrectionist, but he says he'll leave the future of the Republican Party frontrunner's presidential campaign in the hands of the country's courts.
Trump an insurrectionist, sir?
Well, I think certainly it's self-evident. You saw it all. Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. There's no question about it. None. Zero. And he seems to be doubling down on about everything.
Donald Trump's asking the US Supreme Court to overturn Tuesday's decision by the Supreme Court in Colorado that ruled him ineligible to run for the presidency on the basis he inspired an insurrection after losing the 2020 election. And the death toll from an earthquake in China has risen to 134 as cold weather hampers search efforts for survivors. The 6.2 magnitude shock struck a poor mountainous area about 1,100 kilometres west of Beijing. Our Asia correspondent is Andrew Wood.
Thousands of rescuers are in Gansu province on the edge of the Tibetan plateau. The earthquake happened at 1 minute to midnight local time on Monday. Residents rushed out of houses into a particularly cold winter night. A rule of thumb is that there are 72 hours following an earthquake to find survivors, and sub-zero temperatures are making this window even shorter.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, getting an update today about the situation in Ukraine. Winter is on the march there, and Ukrainian forces are somewhat stalled in their efforts to push back against the Russians. That's one reason why President Volodymyr Zelensky is continuing to urge the US and its European allies to continue providing him with military assistance well into 2024. Cormac Smith is a former strategic communications advisor to the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry.
I don't think either side has the upper hand at the moment. From all reports I hear, the Ukrainians are starting to run short of artillery ammunition and anti-aircraft ammunition and so forth, and this is impacting on how they plan their battle strategies. It's certainly the case, according to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, that the Russians are taking huge casualties, but we've heard reports already that the Ukrainians are being forced to switch from attack to defense it is difficult for Ukraine at the moment. And of course, they're heading into winter as well.
In the United States, gridlock on Capitol Hill is now expected to stretch into January without any agreement on a resumption of financial support for Ukraine. On Tuesday, President Zelensky said that his country can still win the war, but he said that Ukraine is fighting for its life.
Our top stories again. The United Nations Security Council has once more postponed a vote on humanitarian pauses in Gaza amid deep disagreements between countries. Hamas says 20,000 Gazans have been killed in the Palestinian territory since Israel responded to its attack in October. And former President Donald Trump is asking the US Supreme Court to overturn a decision by the Supreme Court in Colorado that ruled him ineligible to run for the presidency. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
Hours spent volunteering at a local homeless shelter truly make her death at the hands of a drunk driver earlier this week all the harder to take for this school and this community.
I never knew Amanda, but everywhere I went there were touching reminders of the caring friend she would have been to me had I known her.
Losing Amanda was one of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with, but I knew I had to be strong for this community. I couldn't let them go through the funeral without my support.
She's so much better than all of us. She was not good. She cared about so many people. She loved you so much. What's your name? She loved you, Russell.
And we have O'Brady Shaw with us right now.
Thanks, Brooke.
Not quite how I would have reported the story. Seems a bit unprofessional to let yourself get so emotional.
Well, when people are feeling pain, I feel it too. Don't you ever get emotionally invested in a story?
No, I don't. You know, I had my tear ducts cauterized years ago, and I like to keep my emotions stored in a special place in my mind where they only come out for my night terrors.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Riley,
and Nikki.
And I wanted to tell you about our amplifier program. And I'd like to thank CivPack, who's a silver level amplifier with our amplifier program. That means that CivPack gives at least $5 a month to us through the amplifier program at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. And he gets to partake of some perks and benefits of being an amplifier. And also he gives to us to help us keep the show on the air, keep the show running. So thank you so much for that, CivPack. And if you'd like to learn more, listener, you can go to amps.freetalklive.com. It stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support.freetalklive.com. And it looks like we have a caller already on the line again. David in New Mexico. Bet you didn't think I'd answer you that quickly. What's on your mind?
It's a record. It's a record, Bonnie. That is the record.
I think so, too.
And I have a... go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, but what's on your mind?
A couple things, one main thing, but first of all, I have a new word for you that I think you'll enjoy. I think it's called, I think the captain calls these portobellos or something.
Portmanteaus.
Yeah.
There you go. Portmanteau mushroom.
Mm-hmm.
Come up quickly. How you were talking about Satanism, and you were talking about the state. How about Satanism?
There you go, Satanism.
Apparently, what is his name? You guys have a similar voice. Ernie Hancock, he created Satanism.com. Like he has the domain name or whatever, Satanism.com, and it's a great one.
Darn it.
Sorry, David. I guess you don't get that one.
Don't worry. I believe you that you hadn't heard it from him and that you made that up yourself, though. I think it's a pretty good one.
It was probably, I hear him from time to time, so he probably said it, and it was probably in the back of my head. And
Yeah.
then the fact that you guys were talking about the state and Satan and the state and Satan and the state, and it just came together.
Yeah, but he is on LRN.FM, and he's on the radio during the Free Talk Live slot on Mondays.
Yep.
In case anybody's wondering who the heck we're talking about. Was that all you had for us today, David?
No, I got more. But first of all, who is she?
Who? Oh, Nikki?
You're talking about? No. The Free Talk Live slot.
No, Ernie Hancock. I don't even
Freedom's
say
Phoenix.
Yeah. It's Declare Your Independence. Freedom Phoenix is his website.
The Declare Your Independence.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Yeah. If I said she, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. That's good.
I mean, Ernie is a beautiful name for a woman.
Yeah, Ernest.
Yeah, Ernestine. You guys like secession, so I want to riff on the secession thing and combine it with something you said earlier. But I want to interject also that I would beg to differ. I think that the majority of the people that were here at the founding of this country, and well before the founding of the country for 50, 100, 150 years, I think that the vast majority of them would consider themselves to be Christians. I also think that that especially after the founding documents, that they probably, after debate, probably would have allowed a Satanist display if they were also allowing, like 10 Commandment displays, that kind of thing. I think they probably would have allowed that, after they debated it. But you guys are a fan of secession, right?
Yeah, but
absolutely.
I don't think we said anything like against that. Like, I really don't know. I didn't claim to know that, but in the article it did have something where a conservative said the founders would never have allowed this. So maybe that's what you're applying to.
Yeah, well, there was two parts there. So one, I think he's wrong. I think that the founders, like I said, after debate, probably would have allowed it. And
I'd agree with that.
Pardon?
I would agree that they would allow it after some debate. I think there would have been a major discussion. It would have been a contentious discussion for sure.
Right, but the other part of it was something that you guys did say. One of you three had, or more than one of you three had mentioned that the nation wasn't founded as a Christian nation. But I think the people that actually founded it would argue that it actually was, but they weren't disallowing other religions, and that's why they threw in the protection there. Even to paraphrase what I think they were thinking, they were probably thinking something to the effect of, well, we are a Christian nation, but we don't want, like happened in Europe, the state and the church ganging up together on the people and declaring that you must be this religion.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah, I mean, they did reference God in some of their documents, so it's possible. I just don't. I think exactly what you're saying, that they wouldn't have put the First Amendment the way they did if they intended for other religions to be disallowed.
Right. So
unallowed.
Moving on to the secession thing, I want to riff on. You guys are a fan of that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the freedom that secession provides. And so I want to challenge you on something you had said the Electoral College, and you weren't a fan of it from what you were saying, but I want to argue the other side and see if you'll come my way a little bit. You're a fan of secession, you're a fan of freedom, and you are because, if New Hampshire were to secede, then the rest of the states, the rest of the people outside of New Hampshire would less be able to tell you in New Hampshire what to do. Is that kind of it?
That sounds like my position.
Okay. And so the Electoral College, if you study it, analyze it, it helps to actually protect what you say you value, because when the country was founded, it was kind of like secession in reverse. It was like you have these, if you want to call them 13 colonies, 13 states, and they're different peoples. They're each one of those was what you want to be if you successfully were able to secede New Hampshire from the Union. They were basically where you want to go. And then they said, hey, you know what? If we combine into this union, it might help us in this way and this way. We're going to lose a little bit here and here, and that's why when they had all of their convention, or had their convention and their meetings, and and so on. They went on for however many months or years debating all these things. They were well aware that coming together in a union could lose them some of the freedoms that they were enjoying in their seceded state. They were already seceded from one another because there was no union. And so they argued all these things, and one of the protection, they put in many protections so that they wouldn't be totally controlled by the union. And one of them was the Electoral College, because remember, each one of these colonies, states, they had their own ideas, and way up north in New Hampshire, you probably had some different values and ideas and things than the people in South Carolina, for instance. And you didn't want the people in South Carolina telling you in New Hampshire what to do. So one of the many ways to protect that was to make an electoral college. So let's say all of a sudden New Hampshire's got a population of 10,006, but for some reason South Carolina got really popular because they got nice beaches and warm weather or something, and they all of a sudden they got a population of 1 billion. So now your 10,000 voters won't get to have any say hardly at all. I mean,
David, we already explained this. So I'm sorry, you're just taking a long time to explain what the Electoral College is, and it's like
long-winded and thorough.
It's okay. We already explained this on there, and we said I get why they do it, because it's like now Montana at least has some kind of a say versus New York with way more people, but it's just kind of like that's just like trying to put a Band-Aid on the crap that is democracy and voting for like getting the majority vote to win in a situation like this, which is why we said, like, if you're gonna do it, just go fully and do it. And it's like, because either way we know it's not actually quote unquote fair. It's not really fair for any, like, for 50% of the or 49% of the country to not want the person who wins to be the president, and, well, tough cookies. Like, it's not, that's our whole point. You see what I mean? Like, I understand why they have it the way it is. It's just,
that's why,
to me, I think it's dumb. All of it.
So the idea about that, 51% of the people get to tell the other 49% what to do. If it was complete straight democracy without all the checks and balances, that would be true. That's why we're not a democracy. We're a democratic.
But the checks and balances aren't real, though. I think at one point they were, and it like, I understand like why the government was set up the way it was.
I did too. I mean, I've read the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and some things like that. But at the same time, it's like we keep going back to the past to hopefully trying to fix the problem. And the problem is that we're big. There's a lot of people, and we're all spread out. And it's time we try something different.
Yeah, I think we can only like move forward, right?
It's much bigger than it used to be.
I agree with you, but what I'm trying to say is the checks and balances aren't just the three branches. This one checks that one, and that one checks that one, and they all check each other.
Yeah.
That's not it. The checks and balances that I'm talking about is everything that you do, like when you go Robin Hooding. That's a check and a balance. You're putting a check. You're putting a check on the meter maid. And the gang that she's working for. That's a check and balance. And what I'm saying is, if you beef up all of those checks and balances, if everybody I won't say everybody because Bonnie will jump on my case. If a lot of more people throughout the country would go out robbing. There's a Freudian slip.
Oh no.
Robin hooding. I guess the government is the one doing the robbing. But if everybody, there we go again. If a lot more people would go out and do Robin Hooding, then it might have a greater effect of people being aware of the thievery that the government is doing toward you in regard to your money. But remember, we were founded not as a democracy, but as a democratic constitutional republic, and it was founded that way on purpose because they were afraid of pure democracy would be mob rule, would truly be 51% telling 49% what they could and couldn't do.
Yeah, I understand that, David, but thank you for the call, and thank you for the getting into all that history and stuff. I
mean, he's making some very fair points.
He is. He's making some really good points. I mean, checks and balances are really great in a government system, but
I think he thought we didn't understand how it worked when we were talking about how it worked.
But that being said, going back to checks and balances, that being said, with checks and balances, not all people are going to want to go Robin Hooding or do civil disobedience and do all these things. Most people, in fact, just want to live their lives and forget that they've still got to check and balance the government.
Right, like I shouldn't have to do that. And
it shouldn't just be done at the ballot box either.
It's just like it shouldn't, other people's decisions, like people who just want to live their life, they're okay, then you shouldn't have any say over mine. Like if you don't care about all this stuff, you know what I mean? But I'm moving on. Gigi in South Carolina, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Good evening. Hey, I agree with everybody. For a change, it is a refreshing change when David from New Mexico calls with an intelligent contribution of a positive nature. Hallelujah. Now, here is a great civics lesson for all my fellow listeners out there in Radio Land. As a former political science professor and hardcore board member of the Miami ACLU chapter, never should you see on the steps of any courthouse, state, municipal, small claims, appellate, federal, or other, any type of religious symbol, whether it's satanic, Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist. Nothing, nothing, nothing. That reinforces separation of church and state. That reinforces checks and balances. You want to celebrate? Celebrate publicly, privately, on public property or private property.
So,
and
Gigi,
that's my contribution.
Thank you for the contribution. I do have a question for you, Gigi.
Yes, sir.
You've said on the show that you're Jewish. You wouldn't want a Jewish symbol on a government property?
No, sir. Not on the courthouse steps. As a matter of fact, permit me an extra moment to share a personal story just about that.
Sure.
Almost 10 years ago, I got married in a civil ceremony to my husband, who was also Jewish. We were both married in a civil ceremony. We had to go to the Charleston courthouse in downtown Charleston to get our marriage certificate. The judge that my husband clerked for after graduating Howard School of Law in D.C., married us. It was very special to us both because Jeffrey had a wonderful, special, professional, and personal rapport with the judge, and he was the first African-American judge appointed in South Carolina. We don't have judges elected to the probate and mental health courts. So it was very special to us. When we entered the courthouse, I had only been living in Charleston for about 6 months. Our anniversary is December 30th. What do I see inside the courthouse? Oh, my goodness. I was going, can't flush the potty. You have to speak like a lady. Shall we say, I was going ballistic. And I kept telling my husband, what is all of this? I saw Christmas trees next to each clerk's window.
Interesting.
I saw big Christmas trees, all decorated by the escalators. So me and my big mouth, I admit wholeheartedly, went up to one of the, I don't know what he was. He looked like an usher in a red sports coat standing by the escalator. I said, why is there so much Christmas symbols all over a public governmental entity? So he said, lady, it's Christmas. What's wrong with you? My husband got nervous and pulled on my dress and said, Gigi, be quiet. Let's go get our certificate. I was livid. And to this day, everybody, all the hosts and everybody listening, I still have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that.
don't want to see anything. And you know what? For many years, I worked as a researcher for the Attorney General's Civil Rights Division in the state of Florida when Jeb Bush was governor. And excuse me. What was very interesting was that when Charlie Crist took over as governor for one term in Florida as a Republican, he had a mezuzah on his door entering his main office in the state capitol. Not the governor's mansion,
one
but
of those
the
clay
state capitol building.
It's like those clay things that are
He was
closed
ordered
up.
by the ACLU, who filed suit. Get rid of it. No religious symbols. How do you like that? And I was totally okay with it.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, I don't feel like it is the place for any sort of religious symbols. I mean, like, if it was
Put
his
it up in
office,
your
I think that's
house.
one thing, but...
Right.
But when you're
So
working
those are
for...
my contributions
Thank you,
tonight.
Gigi.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you're, one of those people who understands that like it goes both ways.
Gigi's very consistent.
She's very consistent. That's what I like about her. She's
Yeah.
such a great caller. She's intelligent. She speaks what she's very good at articulating her points.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
if we're going to have this discussion about whether a religious icon should be on government property, I would agree with Gigi. Let's have no religious
And that's the
religious
thing, yeah.
icon. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But no
Iconography?
religious. Yes, exactly.
I
No
had to think
religious
about it, too.
symbolism on any government property whatsoever. Let's not have any religious symbolism.
Yeah, and I think that, like, with the previous article that we were discussing, I mean, that kind of, like, takes care of it.
Oh, absolutely.
I think in, like, public places, like, it's nice when, like, the downtown area is kind of, like, decorated for the holiday season. But I think that's different than like an actual, like the State House or the Capitol building, like an actual government building. I don't really, I mean, maybe some seasonal decoration, like you can, I'm not offended by decorations, but I don't think it should be like any sort of religious symbolism. I just don't really think it's the place, because then we fall back into the trap of, oh, well, everyone needs to be represented, right? So we have Christmas trees and menorahs, and then we're gonna have to put a big statue of Satan there too, and then like somebody's going to get offended. And I think it's just easier if we just don't, and it's not really the place. If you want to put a Christmas tree in Keene Central Square, it looks nice, whatever, that's one thing, but I think as far as like, government buildings go, it's like, why is there...
It's kind of...
You know what I mean?
It's
like,
just this...
You're not going to put a statue
eternal,
of Jesus there. Like, it's weird.
It's this eternal, stupid argument that doesn't really get to the actual basis of what we're talking about here. The whole tragedy of the commons. Like, I want to use it for this. How about we just don't steal from each other to create this building where we all have different ideas of what to do there? Stupid.
Just private property really solves this. It's like, and if you don't want to go there, you don't have to go there, but like people are being forced to, like, I am forced to go to the town hall to like register my car or whatever I'm doing there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm forced to go to the courthouse when I'm summoned to court.
Or if you don't have to go there, you're still forced to pay for its maintenance.
That even worse. Even worse.
Mm-hmm. But Nikki, you brought in a story.
I did,
about a kid that got adopted without his dad's consent, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, so this is from ABC News. Father fights for baby girl placed for adoption without his knowledge or consent, which is absolutely horrific and terrifying. So this happened in Hillsborough County, Florida.
Oh, you scared me for a second.
Not in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So standing in his daughter's bedroom, Brandon Martelise tried to fight back tears. So I'm assuming he's being interviewed by the person from ABC and in the nursery that was set up for his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard, Martelise said. Sometimes I can come in here and sometimes I can't. Martelise's only child is a daughter he has never met. I had books for her, a few toys, tons of clothes. I'm getting ready to give them away because I know they're not going to fit her anymore, Martelise said.
My goodness.
A huge tragedy.
This sounds extremely sad, but we're going to get into it when we come back. 603-283-6160 is the phone number for you to call. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Day 74 of the war between Israel and Hamas, and there are fresh signs of a new break in fighting, with Hamas leadership in Egypt for talks on another ceasefire. But the United Nations Security Council has again postponed a vote calling for humanitarian pauses in Gaza amid deep disagreements between countries. Jodie Jacobs reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
In what was not a surprise announcement, the President of the UN Security Council communicated another delay in the vote.
The presidency will schedule the adoption for tomorrow morning.
For several days now, the Council has been trying to reach consensus on a humanitarian resolution on Gaza. The UAE's ambassador to the UN, Lana Nasabeh, told reporters that high-level discussions are happening between capitals to try and reach a text that will in fact be adopted.
Diplomacy takes time. It means evolving conversations, and people are giving it their attention at the highest levels of the capitals that have leverage on this.
And the UAE ambassador says the objective of this resolution was and always has been to try and positively impact the people of Gaza.
Hamas says 20,000 Gazans have been killed in the Palestinian territory since Israel responded to its attack in October. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, says his country's military wants to mobilize an additional 500,000 people, a move that would mark a dramatic step up as the war there against Russia approaches its 2-year anniversary. In the US, President Joe Biden says there's no question that former President Donald Trump is an insurrectionist, but he says he'll leave the future of the Republican Party frontrunner's presidential campaign in the hands of the country's courts.
Trump an insurrectionist, sir?
Well, I think certainly it's self-evident. You saw it all. Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. There's no question about it. None. Zero. And he seems to be doubling down on about everything.
Donald Trump's asking the US Supreme Court to overturn Tuesday's decision by the Supreme Court in Colorado that ruled him ineligible to run for the presidency on the basis he inspired an insurrection after losing the 2020 election. And the death toll from an earthquake in China has risen to 134 as cold weather hampers search efforts for survivors. The 6.2 magnitude shock struck a poor mountainous area about 1,100 kilometres west of Beijing. Our Asia correspondent is Andrew Wood.
Thousands of rescuers are in Gansu province on the edge of the Tibetan plateau. The earthquake happened at 1 minute to midnight local time on Monday. Residents rushed out of houses into a particularly cold winter night. A rule of thumb is that there are 72 hours following an earthquake to find survivors, and sub-zero temperatures are making this window even shorter.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live is talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number you can call in this last segment to get in on the show with us and talk about whatever is on your mind. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Riley,
and Nikki.
And in the last segment, we had a few calls and we were talking about religious freedoms and checks and balances in the United States. But we've moved on and we're talking about this story from ABC, Nikki, you said?
Yep. ABC Action News. So this is a story about a gentleman whose daughter was placed for adoption without his knowledge or consent. And he's currently, this is like the outline of him being interviewed by a reporter at ABC.
Mm-hmm.
So his daughter will turn 2 in January. Martelise took a picture with his child's mother 2 days before she gave birth. Hands on her, talking to my daughter through her stomach. You know, I was there. I was with her, Martelise said. We had her name picked out and everything. So this guy is like, and then below it shows a picture. The picture in question a couple days before she gave birth.
Of him like touching her stomach or something?
Yeah. So it looks like they're a couple at this point. And essentially he was completely blindsided by what happened next. So pictures then turned to panic, Martelise said. The day before their daughter was born, he texted to ask if she was going to the hospital the next day. She said she thought so. He responded by asking if she was going to come outside when she was going. No response. That doesn't really make sense.
I think what they're trying to say is that she didn't respond to his text on whether she's
yeah, but I don't know what they mean by he responded by asking if she was going to come outside and when she was going. Oh, okay. So he was just asking when she's going to the hospital. Okay.
I know. I wonder why I said outside.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't really know exactly what that meant. But then Martelise said, I was told that my daughter passed away.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
In a court filing. Yeah, this is quite the journey. Then Martelise, in a court filing, Martelise said the mother of his child told him the child had died due to sudden infant death syndrome, also known as SIDS. I couldn't accept it. I needed to see, Martelise said. I'm going to hospital and they're calling security on me because I'm here looking for my daughter and I can't find her. Then nearly 3 weeks after their daughter was born, the mother sent 2 texts to Martelise. I have her and I got the baby. So this is a big difference from 1 second she's dead and then 1 second she's
got her. Yeah.
Sending, I've got her. I have the baby.
It seems like, is this guy possibly, I might get into it, is he kind of like mentally disabled? It seems like it's a little weird, like the way he talks and...
Yeah, though I also think the article's kind of written a little weird, but...
Yeah, but it's like, it's a little weird. It's like, I was in love with her and she's like, I don't know.
Like why wouldn't he be at the birth?
Yeah.
Like why wouldn't she want him there?
Where
maybe
was she?
Maybe they weren't together. The picture kind of made it seem, I mean, he's touching her belly. The picture kind of looks like it's not a very good picture, but it looks like they would be a couple. I mean, like I wouldn't want someone touching me like that if they weren't the father of my child. You know what I mean? I mean, he is obviously the father, but like if we weren't in a relationship, maybe, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, but it seems like they probably aren't in a relationship based on like, why wouldn't you want him there? Like that's kind of weird.
And why would you lie to him about giving it away?
Yeah,
the whole thing is very strange. So
does the article get into why the mom gave the child away?
Well, let's find out.
Okay.
That news marks the start of a new nightmare for Martelise, with him texting her, I want to see my baby. I found out from a CPS lady that there was a baby that was born, a newborn that was still alive, and I reached out to someone that worked for her, the adoption agency that she told me about, Martelise said. I felt like, okay, well, I'm the father, I'm her dad, I can take a test, I can prove I'm her dad, my daughter's alive. Martelise is fighting for custody while the child is with prospective adoptive parents through the agency Heart of Adoptions. According to court documents, the day after his baby was born, before he said he even knew it, the mother consented to adoption and named Martelise as a man who might have interest in the minor child.
Shouldn't that be like okay, well, then the baby doesn't get to go anywhere until Martelise says so?
You'd think so, but she didn't list him on the birth certificate.
Oh, okay.
And
wow.
This is why I brought this in, because it really just dives into how fathers have no rights. And it's awful. And I think it's worse if you're not married.
Mm-hmm.
So, court documents show the adoption agency said the termination of parental rights was not required because they were not married.
Wow.
He wasn't listed on the birth certificate, was not on the punitive father registry, a little-known state registry for fathers to claim paternity, and had not paid a fair and reasonable amount of living and medical expenses in connection with the pregnancy and birth.
So wait, he was on that list or he wasn't?
He wasn't.
Oh.
So you'd think like his DNA
would be enough. Right.
Like he's her father. And this is horrifying for any man who is in a situation like this, that your children can be stolen from you. If it's just really sad, because there's so many cases where women's rights kind of trump men's rights in these sense, especially when it comes to like family court, any sort of like divorce court, parental rights. Like the woman typically is going to get her way.
Yeah, typically.
Even when it's not, even when it doesn't make sense, and even when it's not right. So this just really outlines like how crazy this whole thing is.
I have a friend here in New Hampshire who like has went through that crap with his daughter and his ex-wife and stuff.
Yeah.
And he says, as much as that is true, he has taken a lot less of the, it's like all about fathers don't have rights and mothers can get away ever since he really got into it, because he was meeting tons and tons and tons of women who the same crap was happening to them. Like, oh, the dad has all the money, so he
I've seen that happen before. It's like whoever, so it can
just
go
like
both
the problem
ways.
is the government. You
Yes,
know?
absolutely.
Like, the government
the
shouldn't be
system
involved.
is broken. They were trying to ask me. So this is Martelise again. They were trying to ask me if I would. That she's going to a great home and all this, and I couldn't hear that. I cut off.
Wow.
I said,
no,
no,
she's going to a great home. What? It's not a freaking hamster.
Imagine. Yeah, it's not a dog.
Yeah.
Imagine someone saying this to you about your child. I can't even imagine it.
That's so sad.
He said, I cut off. I said, no, she's not. Over my dead body. She's not. Martelise said out of his conversation with Heart of Adoptions. So this is him speaking with the adoption agency, and they're trying to be like,
these people are freaking gross. Like, they know that there is a biological father that's interested in raising the daughter, and they don't care what's like best for the kid.
They're stealing his baby. Like,
that's
it's
crazy.
insane.
It's for profit, probably.
Probably. So he filed a petition to determine paternity and filled out the registry the same month his daughter was born. So he did it almost immediately. Once he found out she was alive, he took the steps he needed to get custody. I am willing to do whatever it takes to be given custody of my daughter and be in her life, Martelise wrote in court records. I am willing to pay whatever form or support it costs or takes. Martelise denied he was aware of the mother's adoption plan in May 2021 and denied he provided no financial support during her pregnancy.
Wow.
He stated he didn't maintain contact with the child because the mother and the adoption people, quote unquote, prevented it.
So they're trying to like claim that, oh, well, he wasn't in contact with the child.
And
when
it's like,
they're
why does he
stealing
need
it?
to pay for her like prenatal care?
It's probably some state
You know what I mean?
law.
Like, what is that? But it's like, that's probably all coming through insurance. Like, what is he required to pay for? The I-Team contacted the attorney for the adoption agency, who said Mr. Martelise was afforded every right he was entitled to under the law, and that the court simply reached a decision that Mr. Martelise disagrees with. So according to them, family court just didn't rule in his favor. I understand there's people that might not be able to have kids and they might need kids, but they can have ones that people are not able to take care of. I can take care of my baby, Martelise said.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah. David Hurwitz, Martelise's attorney, said it's a fight with the law that favors adoption agencies. It's very difficult to navigate it, and it's hard to fight against it. It needs reform. It's just insane to me that the adoption agency has more rights than this biological father.
Seriously.
Like, that is insane.
Yeah, it's really insane.
What's the point of adoption agencies if they're taking kids away from their parents instead of just giving to the couples who need that's child trafficking. That's straight up
they're
so
stealing
obvious
his
child trafficking.
And it's insane because the mother wanted to put the baby up for adoption, and so it's basically like her right as a parent trumped his.
Mm-hmm.
It's just insane.
It's like, you don't have to take care of it, lady. Like, you could just give it to the dad. Like, that's why I don't really get what her problem is.
Or better yet, just use birth control or something.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's like, it was a little dumb for him. You know, I hate to say, like, dumb, but, like, maybe he should have realized that, like, if you're not married to this lady, you shouldn't be trying to have a kid with her because they have all the rights.
Accidents happen.
Sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. He didn't set himself up for not this happening, and I'm not like blaming him, but I'm saying that
it was a poor mate selection.
Yeah, a lot of people make stupid decisions when it comes to kids. I think it's weird to be so careless about it.
Yeah, it is.
Like, I've always had that in the forefront of my mind while dating. Like, I'm not gonna I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that there's no way I'm getting pregnant because I don't want a kid right now, you know, at any point in time, like not right this second. And if I were to get pregnant, would this be like a good person to have a kid with?
I would honestly never have sex with someone that I didn't feel comfortable like having a child with. Even in cases like when I was a teenager and I was like not ready, you know, obviously like at that point I was like using forms of contraception, like I was practicing safe sex, so I didn't get pregnant when I was, you know, not ready for it. But even like all of my boyfriends, it was like I was like, if I get you know what I mean? Like I was never in a position where I wouldn't just like carelessly have sex with someone who I would think would be a bad father.
And like I've definitely made terrible judgment calls in that case, as in like guys I've dated actually ended up sucking, but a lot of times guys will like trick you that they aren't the person they are until a few months in or whatever.
So this is where I would disagree with Nikki on this, and we have different preferences. You know, for me, sex is a connecting act, and I would only have sex with someone I really care about. And so that's where I would disagree with you. I mean, I wouldn't look at them and say, oh, are they going to make a great mother? I'm looking at them, do I really care about this person enough to sleep with them?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would like that as well.
Okay.
But I think especially like being a woman where it's like, yeah, you might get, I mean, like, and obviously like being a man as well, you have to think like practicing safe sex, like I don't want to get this person pregnant.
Right.
So.
Could track the cycle, get a vasectomy, things like that.
Yeah, use condoms. I mean, there's so many forms of contraception, but yeah. I mean, and accidents happen, like whatever, people have one night stands, you get drunk at the bar, accidentally get pregnant, like things happen. But yeah, I think I see a lot of poor mate selection. I saw this Twitter post. I'm assuming it seemed like she was serious. And she looked like the type of girl to seriously say this, but it was a post that said, man, I wish we could pick our baby daddies.
What?
And it's like, you can't. Like,
wait, that was a tweet you said?
Yeah, it was a tweet. It was like some like ghetto person obviously tweeting that, but
That's
it was
so
like
stupid.
Yeah,
I can't
just
even
don't
wrap my
get
hand-
pregnant.
What was she thinking when she wrote that? Like, it sounds like
I think
so
it was
stupid.
just like very common to accidentally get pregnant, and it's like, oh, I wish I could have chose this person, and it's like, well, you chose to have sex with them, like unprotected sex.
I'm just
so like you
in utter shock.
And yeah, it's like
it makes it sound like she's like in some housemaids. Wait, what's it called?
Handmaid's Tale.
I wish we could pick our baby daddy. Like,
yeah,
what?
it's like you can't. You did. Technically.
And you technically did.
But yeah, so I just think of stuff like that where people are just like so low IQ where it's like, oh my gosh.
I think it has to come down to proper sex education. Like,
Right.
I don't think a lot of Americans have good sex education. I know I didn't get really good sex education as a kid.
The abstinence, that
that's all
doesn't
we were
work.
told. Abstinence, you can't have sex until you're married. Well, we're human, we're going to explore stuff like this, and so it's like...
My grandma, this was obviously in the 60s, because my dad was born in early 1970. She was 16, and she told her boyfriend, who ended up being my grandpa, that she was 18, and she got pregnant, and they had to run away to a different state. But she told me, like, straight up, she was not joking she was being serious. She told me that whenever she got pregnant, she was telling her baby daddy, my grandpa, he was like, I don't know, she said something along the lines of, she was like, I didn't know this could happen. He was like, what, do you think men have a button on them they can press? And she was like, wait, you do? Like, she thought that was serious. She thought he was being serious.
Yeah.
She had no idea that there was
point I'm trying to make is
such a risk.
People need to be educated about safe sex. If you're going to have sex with somebody, make sure it's with someone you care about.
And responsibilities.
Yeah, be
too.
responsible for your body. Be responsible for your putting in your body.
I think there's like so much lack of responsibility in just like in the world today. And it's like I know girls who are like essentially using abortion as a form of birth control.
Oh my god.
And it's like, girlfriend, like just that
that's bad.
One,
for
it's like,
you.
okay, like there's
Physically.
there's a moral side to it. And then it's also like physically, like for your body, like that is so bad for your body. Like it's so unhealthy for you.
Do over and over again.
And it's like, you might as well just get on the birth. Like there are,
birth control is less bad for you, as bad as I think it kind of is.
And it's like most people that qualify for like any sort of health insurance, it's like that's usually covered within your health insurance. Yeah, or like not that expensive. A lot cheaper than a kid or an abortion.
Right.
I mean, an abortion is like $500 with insurance. I'm pretty sure.
Whoa. That's actually cheaper than I would have thought.
I think that's like what people pay if they have insurance. I mean, obviously it depends, like if you have insurance and all of those things. And
abortion's about the same price as like lip injections.
Huh.
Yeah, well, and
Treated
that's
the same.
And I think that's why it's so like people are so careless with it. It's like, yeah, it's just it's really it's really eye-opening. But this article goes on to say, earlier this year, the I-Team shared the story of Ulysses Carwise, a father whose story is shared by others but rarely told because the cases are not public. Carwise is still fighting for his daughter more than 5 years after she was born and signed over to an adoption agency without his knowledge or consent. Carwise's story inspired other Tampa Bay area fathers to contact the I-Team, saying they, too, are in an uphill battle to establish parental rights. In October, a judge decided because Martelise had not provided any financial or medical support since the child's birth, he wasn't given an opportunity.
No.
His consent was not required to move forward with an adoption.
What the heck does that even mean? Like, in a day? And like without any... He
Like
already
what-
had bought stuff for the baby,
Yeah,
so
like
he technically
what
did.
Financial support. And it's like, in a world where your insurance pays for everything, what financial support is required?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not... I just don't know what they mean.
And like, did she ask?
Maybe.
She probably didn't ask if she was planning on just telling him that the baby died.
I mean, that's insane. And to lie about that, it's like, yeah.
She obviously is like, something's wrong with her. So this just makes me think like, these are some people with like mental problems.
They looked, I hate to say this because I don't like to be judgmental, but in the photo they looked pretty ghetto. Like she looked like, I don't know,
Trashy.
to even do this. Like this is a bad thing to do.
It's not that bad to say that somebody looked trashy, because there are things that people do in a society to look not trashy, and like if you're not doing that, brushing your hair, stuff like that. Like, I don't know. Then you can't really control what other people say.
So this is Martelise continuing. She should be here in this house, Martelise said. I'm the one who can love her. No one can do that like I can.
And
he's not giving up this fight, which I really commend him for. I mean, this is horrific. Like, this is so sad.
It is it's definitely really sad that this is happening. And
and it happens.
Hopefully it has a good end.
Clearly to more than this guy.
Yeah.
Attorneys told the I-Team the window of time to appeal the case has closed. Martelise maintains he will continue fighting for his daughter. There's a lot of fathers out there that are being robbed, that are good dads that would, that are great dads, something needs to be done about this. We need some help. So if anybody can hear us, we need some help, Martelly said. So he's basically like pleading to the world, to anyone who can. It's just sad because obviously like this guy has limited resources. Like he hired an attorney, but it's like, he can't like campaign and change laws. He can try, but it's like one person can only do so much. And, and I'm so glad that ABC is like bringing light to this.
Right. And this is kind of an example of like when I was saying I don't care for the whole rhetoric around like, oh, well, shootings, police violence, like, it affects Black people more than other people. I don't care for that anymore, like that type of rhetoric anymore, because it's like, that's just kind of like putting down like the importance of like white people being also abused by police. And this is an exact example of the same exact principle. Like, because people are always so worried about like women's rights, well, sometimes when things like this happen to men, nobody cares. Like, there is not as many people listening as like if this story was about a woman getting her baby taken away.
And I think and we see that with like male suicide rates and depression and stuff like that. It's like men actually commit suicide successfully more than women. Like the rate, I don't know the exact percentage. Yeah. But men are more likely to be successful. But you don't hear about it as much. It's more like you hear about the feminine issues more, especially when it comes to like mental health, parental rights, stuff like that. Like isn't always a lot of light shown on a lot of the male struggles. And it is really, like you hear about a lot of deadbeat baby daddies, but you don't always hear about a man who is fighting custody for his child for years. Yeah. And then there was another guy, 5 years. His daughter was 5 years old. It's crazy.
It is a little crazy, and fathers should have as much rights as mothers, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's half of his DNA at the end of the day. Like, that is half his child. I think to a certain extent, like as far as like the birth process goes, like the woman is the one that's giving birth. So I think she should call the shots as far as like her like prenatal care and her like birth care. But as far as parenting, I mean, it's insane to say that a father doesn't have a right over his own child if he doesn't want it put up for adoption.
Yeah, like the baby was out of her body at that point.
Just because they weren't married and because she didn't list him on the birth certificate.
It's just a bunch of like
she lied
government stuff
to him. I mean, he had the text messages saying like where she said her daughter died. Like, that's insane. The whole thing is completely insane.
This is another example of like the government, it doesn't have common sense, obviously. Like, it can't utilize common sense. It just checks boxes. Like, did you give financially to the baby since it was born? It was taken away from me and lied about. And I have this text saying, no, you didn't give financial support
it makes absolutely no sense. And imagine being the adoptive parents knowing that the father is out there. Yeah. The biological father knowing that he wants his daughter, and imagine like being in the way of that. Like, there are so many children who don't have loving fathers. There's so many children in foster care right now that need a family, and you're gonna choose one that has a family that wants to love it. Like, it just doesn't.
Oh, Skeeter. Sorry, Skeeter. I see you're on hold, but it looks like it's the end of the show.
Oh,
so you're gonna have to call
bummer.
back tomorrow, Skeeter. It's been Free Talk Live. You can go to freetalklive.com for more and go check out all our socials from there. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. Peace.
If you're looking for work, there's a piece of paper more important than your resume. It's the cover letter attached if you're snail mailing, or the email to which you attach your resume. Make it 4 short paragraphs. Paragraph 1, say that you're applying for work. The person you're sending to gets a ton of mail about all sorts of things. If you have a password, that's your first sentence. Tom Nelson tells me you and I should meet. Paragraph 2, what you do and how that relates to the opening. Be as specific as possible.